Chapter 1466. Lin Feng's expression was calm, but Jihuang Xinyuan could not help but raise his eyebrows when he heard what he said. Even with his all-seeing eyes and all-hearing ability, he did not expect such an outcome. Lin Feng had fought with the Gautama Buddha before, and because of this, the Taishu Taoist could not suppress him alone. As a result, he and Juehuang Xuanchang had to return. Therefore, although Jihuang Xinyuan did not know what Lin Feng was thinking, he could not tell if Lin Feng was a friend or foe. If Lin Feng was hostile, he could have stopped fighting and let the Gautama Buddha return to the Dead Sea to suppress him. He could even have helped to suppress him. However, Lin Feng did not do that. Under the circumstances, dealing with the Taishu Taoist, the Haotian Mirror, and the Gautama Buddha first was undoubtedly the right choice. However, the reason why Lin Feng allowed the two great demon emperors to return to the vast thousand domains was because he wanted to fight them. This was out of Jihuang Xinyuan's expectations. However, Jihuang Xinyuan was not afraid. He looked at Lin Feng and grinned. "Oh, you're quite ambitious. Let's fight then." As he spoke, Jihuang Xinyuan's figure suddenly split into two light shadows. One of the shadows continued to wrestle with Lin Feng at this moment, while the other shadow quickly attacked towards the other side. However, its target was not the Gautama Buddha or Lin Feng, but the whirlpool where the power of the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea converged, where the sky-crushing sword was. As his figure moved, the two figures' auras and power were indistinguishable. At this moment, they seemed to be real at the same time. It was extremely mysterious. Lin Feng released his mystic ability and dermic power. He could sense that Lin Feng was a top human expert on the same level as the Taishu Taoist and the Gautama Buddha. Although the Book of Destruction looked like a Mahayana-grade treasure, it did not seem to be inferior to the Haotian Mirror. In addition, there was an existence hidden in the void that made him feel apprehensive. Although Jihuang Xinyuan was arrogant, he could tell that this unfamiliar purple-robed young man in front of him had the highest overall strength among the three human race powerhouses present. Furthermore, the extreme Emperor's divine abyss was able to observe heaven and earth. The moment he returned to the universe and saw the vortex where the Sky Destroyer was, he could vaguely tell that the treasure that was being refined once again belonged to Lin Feng. Coupled with this magic treasure, Lin Feng's strength had reached a shocking level. It was fine if Lin Feng didn't participate in the battle, but once he did, the heaven-punishing sword, which seemed like it wouldn't be used, would actually be the greatest variable and threat. Lin Feng himself, the Book of Destruction, the Taishu Taoist, the Haotian Mirror, and Gautama Buddha. His current strength was basically fixed, and the possibility of a sudden change was very small. At the intersection of the spiritual sea and the Dead Sea, the seemingly dormant heaven-punishing sword in the whirlpool became brighter and brighter, and its sword intent became fiercer and fiercer. It was obvious that it was constantly improving. Even peak experts like Jihuang Xinyuan and Juehuang Xianchang were taken aback by this brutal and ruthless power concept. Moreover, it was still rising. Since Lin Feng was participating in the battle, the first thing Jihuang Xinyuan decided to do was to stop the heaven-punishing sword's third sacrificial offering and find an opportunity to destroy it. Seeing this, Lin Feng's eyes narrowed and the smile on his face grew wider. He reached out with his palm. A Dao fruit appeared in his palm. That profound point created all Dao, encompassing all things, ending everything. This point was difficult to describe, but it seemed to be above all existences. It wasn't above direction, but above reason. The power of Lin Feng's Dao fruit manifested, and Jihuang Xinyuan immediately felt his body slow down. The two light figures that he had split into actually merged back together. The figure that had rushed to the whirlpool, where the heaven-punishing sword was disappeared at this moment, as if it had never existed. Jihuang Xinyuan's heart trembled slightly. Then he saw the Book of Destruction close with a bang, and waves of destructive aura descended like smoke. At the same time, as Lin Feng's fingers opened and closed, the Taiji 1 Yuan treasure light suddenly spread out. 1, 296 billion streams of light enveloped the void, and they also enveloped Jihuang Xinyuan. For a moment, even the extreme Emperor's divine abyss felt like there was no way out of this place. A ferocious glint flashed in his azure blue eyes. His figure suddenly leaped up, avoiding the Taiji Yuan treasure light and the destructive aura of the Book of Destruction. Lin Feng didn't show mercy. He pointed with his finger, and an eternal light of calamity shot out, targeting Jihuang Xinyuan. Jihuang Xinyuan smiled. As blue demonic mist circulated around his body, his figure seemed to transcend this world. From a certain point of view, it was actually somewhat similar to Lin Feng's Tao fruit. The eternal light of calamity, which could transform all things into life and death, was also avoided by Jihuang Xinyuan at this moment. Under the blue demonic mist, Jihuang Xinyuan seemed to distort the existence of the great Tao in this world. In the next moment, Jihuang Xinyuan used extreme agility again, and his figure pounced toward Lin Feng. Lin Feng used his supernatural power, and the Taiji Yuan treasure light enveloped the world. At this moment, Jihuang Xinyuan's azure blue eyes suddenly turned blood red. Blood red light gushed out, and even the blue demonic mist around him turned into a red mist. Jihuang Xinyuan stretched out his claws, sweeping up the red mist and attacking Lin Feng. The ethereal and violent power merged into one, and at this moment, it was as if a large world was crushing toward Lin Feng. Not only was it heavy, but it was also unavoidable. Lin Feng's expression didn't change. The Taiji Yuan treasure light became even more vast, and 296 billion light streams crisscrossed in the void like a net, but they also seemed to converge into one point, blocking Jihuang Xinyuan's path. Under the corruption of the red mist of light, even Lin Feng's Taiji Yuan treasure light, at this moment, lost its miraculous aspect, starting to break apart one by one. However, at the same time, the destructive chi of the Book of Destruction poured down on Jihuang Xinyuan's head like a torrential rain. Under the corrosion of this destructive energy, the red mist dimmed slightly. The Taiji Yuan treasure light immediately switched from defense to offense, resisting the red mist. Jihuang Xinyuan grinned slightly, revealing his sharp fangs, and let out a shrill howl that shook the heaven yuan. His claws were wrapped in the red mist, and he locked Lin Feng in the middle. His arms shook together, as if he was shaking the pillars of the sky. Being shaken like that, the heaven yuan great world also began to shake. The divine land, infinite mainland, and thousands of human and demon cultivators felt dizzy at this moment. The world in front of them was still the same, but their minds were already in chaos. The scenery of the world didn't change, but everyone felt as if the world was collapsing and the world was turning upside down. Some cultivators and demons with lower cultivation levels couldn't adapt to the sudden change in the flow of spirit chi in heaven and earth, and some even suffered from chi deviation. Apart from the spiritual sea and the dead sea that were right in front of him, the remaining star sea, sky sea, paradise sea, nether sea, and profound sea were also surging with monstrous waves. Lin Feng formed a hand seal with both hands, and the Taiji Yuan treasure light spread out, and then a purple aura appeared. The purple aura was the universal universe source chi, which was also known as the universal universe purple aura. At this moment, the myriad source chi of the great heavenly cycle combined with Lin Feng's Taiji Yuan treasure light, and then combined to form a brand new pale white cloud energy. Tai Chi Universal Universe Source Chi. The 296 billion Tai Chi Universal Universe Source Chi circulated around Lin Feng's body, and the destructive Chi of the Book of Destruction descended and combined with it. Together, they stabilized the chaotic space-time they were in, preventing the extreme king abyss from shaking. The destructive Chi of the Book of Destruction could destroy anything, but at this moment, it complemented the Tai Chi Universal Universe Source Chi. Together, they formed a strong line of defense that was impregnable. At the same time, the heavenly Tao chants sounded, and the black and white divine light of creation burst out from Lin Feng's body. Rays of divine light covered the chaos, and countless divine runes were engraved in the void. Ji Huang Xinyuan's blood-red eyes became even colder. On his body, within the blood-red light, large amounts of starlight suddenly appeared. Countless stars revolved around Ji Huang Xinyuan at this moment. It looked like a blood-red, starry sky, with millions of stars flashing and dying. Facing the current Ji Huang Xinyuan, Lin Feng even had an illusion that he was in the desolate ancient star sea, a blood-red desolate ancient star sea. Huh! Lin Feng's expression changed. With a soft shout, his own fruit of Tao also appeared in the void. Once the Tao fruit appeared, everything returned to nothingness, leaving only that mysterious point. The Tai Chi Universal Universe, Source Chi, formed by Lin Feng's Dharma power, along with the destructive Chi of the Book of Destruction, his Tao fruit, and the divine light of creation, continued to block the changes in Ji Huang Xinyuan's mystique power. Ji Huang Xinyuan stared at Lin Feng with his blood-red eyes. The battle between the two sides fell into a stalemate. It seemed like it was going to be a protracted battle. However, at this moment, Lin Feng smiled slightly. He formed a hand seal with one hand and pointed at the void above his head with the other hand. There, in the boundless chaos, it seemed like an independent space-time suddenly appeared. In the space-time, a white jade, immortal mountain descended. On the top of the mountain, the mysterious sky treasure tree's branches and leaves swayed and shone brightly. At the top of the tree, in the mysterious sky time, light, grotto heaven, an illusory figure suddenly appeared. It was Lin Feng's image. Lin Feng walked all the way to the small mysterious sky treasure tree in the grotto heaven and sat cross-legged opposite the sloppy old man's chessboard. The sloppy old man's eyes were still empty and lifeless. His expression was dull and numb. However, he had stopped playing alone. His gaze was no longer on the chessboard. His lifeless eyes were looking at Lin Feng in front of him. Lin Feng smiled calmly. He did not look at the sloppy old man. Instead, he looked up at the sky. Inside the mysterious sky, time, light, grotto heaven, there seemed to be formless light, shadows moving. Previously, Lin Feng had not been able to see them clearly. However, at this moment, he gradually saw the scene inside clearly. Lin Feng smiled and reached out his hand. His fingers gently tapped on the chessboard. From today onwards, this chess game will be called the Mysterious Sky Game. As he tapped on the chessboard, the seemingly ordinary chessboard surged with rays of light and flew out of the mysterious sky, time, light, grotto heaven. Chapter 1467. Within the Xintian time-light paradise, streaks of light flew up from the chessboard. The black and white chess pieces remained on the chessboard, but the crisscrossing lines on the chessboard emitted a faint light that shot into the sky. Streaks of light flowed out of the Xintian time-light paradise and landed in the chaotic space-time. It was as if the entire world had turned into a chessboard. Enveloped by this chessboard, Ji Huang Xinyuan suddenly felt as if he had completely left the great heaven primordial world, as if he had fallen into another greater thousand world. He frowned, and his blood-red eyes flickered slightly. Then, he leapt up from where he stood. Just like how he had dodged the Buddha's Wisdom King's fury, he twisted the great Tao and Dharma as he faced off against Lin Feng. At the same time, his body seemed to have left the world. But as he leapt up, layers of light shadows suddenly appeared in the Xintian game above his head. They landed on the chessboard and turned into glowing chess pieces. These chess pieces rapidly moved, placing and lifting the pieces. The originally flat chessboard suddenly shook violently. This shake vaguely caused Ji Huang Xinyuan's ultimate agility to disappear. Ji Huang Xinyuan's eyes exploded with a shocking light. He roared at the sky, and the blood-red fog around him rapidly spread out as he charged towards the Xintian game. The glowing chess pieces on the Xintian game kept moving. As they moved, they froze the blood-red fog in place, and as they lifted the pieces, they dissipated the fog. Although the blood-red fog kept surging out, the Shintian game was also constantly dispelling it. At the same time, Lin Feng had already switched from defense to offense. He clasped his hands together, and the Book of Destruction's powerful aura of destruction fused with the Tai Chi myriad Qi. Its Tao fruit transformed into the eternal calamity light and shot towards Ji Huang Xinyuan. The fused aura of destruction and the Tai Chi myriad Qi strengthened the eternal calamity light and shot towards Ji Huang Xinyuan together. Ji Huang Xinyuan's expression was solemn. As the fog around him surged, he leapt up again. But as expected, the Shintian game's transformation actually froze his body once more, making it impossible for him to dodge. He could only face the eternal calamity light head-on. Ji Huang Xinyuan's eyes flashed as he looked up at the Shintian game. The power isn't that great, but the concept is quite profound. Unable to dodge, the extreme Emperor Divine Abyss had no choice but to gather its demonic energy and form a crimson cocoon around itself to block Lin Feng's attack. The eternal calamity light continuously eroded the blood cocoon and forced it back, forcing Ji Huang Xinyuan into the Shintian world. The unparalleled demonic emperor was also mentally prepared for this. As soon as he entered the fray, he let out a roar that shook the entire 7 seas and great 1,000 worlds. The blood cocoon around him turned into a boundless blood-red light that expanded wildly. Violent energy swept through space-time, shattering all things in its path. Even the chess pieces on the Shintian game that were close to the extreme Emperor's Divine Abyss were scattered everywhere. Several cracks appeared on the surface of the chessboard, with the extreme Emperor's Divine Abyss at the center. Within the Shintian time grotto heaven, the sloppy old man stared blankly at the chessboard. The chessboard itself was shaking violently. But before Ji Huang Xinyuan could continue wreaking havoc, Lin Feng appeared above the Shintian game with the Book of Destruction. Silently, he looked down at Ji Huang Xinyuan, who had fallen into the game. Of course, Lin Feng wasn't going to sit back and watch the extreme Emperor Divine Abyss escape the Shintian Bureau. He raised the Book of Destruction and flipped through its pages, sending streams of destructive energy into the chessboard. The extreme king's divine abyss frowned. The blood-red light around its body was being weakened by the destructive energy. At the same time, the Shintian game rearranged itself and attacked the extreme emperor together with the Book of Destruction. The fruit of Tao appeared in front of Lin Feng once again. With a thought, the profound point suddenly started to change and strengthen the Shintian game. The Shintian game became more and more profound, and the chessboard changed in a myriad of ways. It was clearly a complicated and rapid change, but at this moment, it gave off a feeling of the vicissitudes of time and the birth of creation. The changes happened in an instant, but at this moment, it felt like an eternity. As the changes happened, the Shintian game continued to spread through the chaotic space-time, gradually filling up the entire chaotic realm. Its borders connected to the Dead Sea, the Spirit Sea, and the great 1,000 realms of the Heaven Primal World. It actually fused the 3 realms into one. But Ji Huang Xinyuan, who was inside the Shintian game, still felt like he was isolated from the Heaven Primal World. The Tai Chi myriad Qi around Lin Feng's body surged, and then he activated the Book of Collapse, combining it with the Qi of Destruction. It turned into streams of mysterious energy that fell towards the extreme Emperor's Divine Abyss, completely suppressing him into the Shintian matrix. The scene in front of Ji Huang Xinyuan suddenly changed. He seemed to suddenly become small, like a chess piece on the chessboard. In the outside world, the Buddha, the Taishu Taoist, Zhuohuang Xianshang, the Grand Taoist Lord, and the others saw light flash, and Ji Huang Xinyuan's figure suddenly shrank. Then he was swept up by the Shintian game, turned into a stream of light, and returned to the Shintian paradise at the peak of Jade Capital Mountain. In the paradise, a stream of light flew down from the sky at the foot of the small Shintian treasure tree and landed on the chessboard. Soon after, Lin Feng also entered the Xiantian paradise with the Book of Destruction. He sat cross-legged in the air and hovered above the chessboard. The Book of Destruction kept flipping in front of Lin Feng, while Lin Feng himself formed hand seals. The Tai Chi source Qi and the destructive energy fused together and strengthened the Xiantian game. At this moment, within the Xiantian game, Ji Huang Xinyuan's eyes were so cold that they almost froze. But he was suppressed by Lin Feng, the Book of Destruction, and the Xiantian game. Streams of profound air kept reducing the blood-red fog around him. The stars in the fog that seemed like the starry sky of the blood-red universe also dimmed. When the others saw this, they were quite shocked. The great demon that Lin Feng was suppressing was not an ordinary demon. It was one of the three famous great demon sovereigns in the history of the great heaven primordial world: Extreme Demon Sovereign, Divine Abyss Extreme Spirit. The rise of the ancient epic had brought endless disasters to the divine land. The rise and fall of the ancient epic had lasted until the end of the Middle Epic. Among the three great demon sovereigns, the Extreme Demon Sovereign was publicly recognized as the strongest in the history of the great heaven primordial world. When he was at his peak, it was almost impossible to trap him. But now, Lin Feng was clearly suppressing Ji Huang Xinyuan in the Xiantian game, unable to escape. Just from this battle alone, Lin Feng had already occupied a place at the top of the legends of the great heaven primordial world. Ji Huang Xinyuan's expression was a little ugly at this moment. In his mind, he could not help but recall the last moments of the Middle Epic. Tens of thousands of calamities in the netherworld sea engulfed the space-time, surrounded by the light of the Haotian mirror like a shadow. There was also the indistinct figure in the netherworld sea who had fought with him for his entire life. Ji Huang Xinyuan's gaze became even colder. He bared his sharp teeth and howled. The blood-red fog around him circulated and spread in all directions. While it resisted the strange air currents that were wearing down his great demon sovereign power, it also tried to invade the Xiantian game. Wherever the blood-red fog passed, the space-time of the world formed by the Xiantian game started to shatter. Ji Huang Xinyuan suddenly started to fight with his life on the line, using a method that would cause both sides to suffer. The violent blood-red fog even rushed out of the Xiantian game and fell towards Lin Feng and the Book of Collapse. A layer of blood-red light appeared on the surface of Lin Feng's original body and the Book of Collapse. The blood-red demonic light infected them, and their spiritual power and auras started to weaken. The chessboard that Ji Huang Xinyuan was on also started to glow with a blood-red light. At first, it was just a small dot, but it continued to expand as if it had been stained and was continuing to spread. At the same time, Lin Feng's suppression seal was also causing damage to Ji Huang Xinyuan. The Extreme Emperor's Divine Abyss was being suppressed by Lin Feng, the Book of Annihilation, and the Xiantian Bureau. Extreme agility couldn't be used to its full potential, and the pressure it was under was even greater than Lin Feng's. The snow-white monkey fur on his body was slowly turning blood-red. It wasn't caused by the blood-red fog around him. Instead, it was caused by the Extreme Emperor's own blood essence being depleted. It was seeping out of every pore of his body. It wasn't dark red, but pure red. It made his body look even more frightening. Ji Huang Xinyuan didn't seem to notice this at all. His eyes were calm and cold as he stared at the Xiantian game, where he was. After temporarily infecting a portion of the Xiantian game and the Book of Collapse, he started to focus his demonic power on Lin Feng's original body. The Xiantian game and the Book of Collapse were both very mysterious, but the root of everything was still Lin Feng himself. Ji Huang Xinyuan understood this, so he turned his attention to Lin Feng. I have already stepped onto the bridge of eternity. Even if I die in battle, I can return from the sea of death. At most, I might be blocked again, but my hope will not be destroyed. And are you willing to die with me? Are you like me, stepping onto the bridge of eternity? As long as this world is not destroyed, you will not die. Although it was silent, Ji Huang Xinyuan's will seem to solidify and fill the void. The holy emperor of the demon race who had once ruled over the heaven's origin world, showed no signs of retreating in the face of such a disadvantage. He directly took on the stance of fighting Lin Feng to the death. His will was so resolute that it could last for eternity. The bloodstains on Lin Feng's purple robes grew thicker. Although they were separated by the Xintian time light grotto heaven, the scene inside the grotto heaven was seen by the Taishu Taoist, Juehuang Xuanshang, and Gautama Buddha. Lin Feng and Jihuang Xinyuan were locked in a battle to the death. It naturally attracted their attention. Juehuang Xuanshang stared at Lin Feng without any warmth in his gaze. It was as cold and cruel as Jihuang Xinyuan's. He suddenly let out a shocking dragon roar. His enormous body turned into chaos and instantly charged towards the whirlpool where the Dead Sea and Spirit Sea gathered and sealed the heaven-punishing sword. The whirlpool formed by the collision of the Dead Sea and Spirit Sea trembled continuously. The light within it grew more and more dazzling, and the aura within it grew more and more vicious. Now that Juehuang had charged into it, the already roaring waves in the Dead Sea and Spirit Sea grew even more ferocious. It caused the whirlpool to twist in the chaos. Chapter 1468. Juehuang Xuanshang's huge body spun in the air and rushed towards the whirlpool where the executioner heaven was. Under the influence of his demonic energy, the Dead Sea and the Spiritual Sea surged even more violently. The Taishu Taoist and Sakyamuni Buddha frowned when they saw this. Speaking of the heaven-punishing sword, they didn't have a good impression of it at all. Their relationship with Lin Feng couldn't be said to be harmonious, and Gautama Buddha even had a rift with Lin Feng. But now that they were fighting, no matter what Lin Feng thought, they were all on the same side. The Taishu Taoist and Sakyamuni Buddha were happy to see the executioner heaven's seal interrupted, but if it was destroyed by Juehuang Xuanshang, then it would have a huge impact on the battle. Whether it was the Taishu Taoist or Sakyamuni Buddha, killing the two Yao Kings and sending them to their deaths was the best outcome. If the two Yao Kings escaped, then it would be difficult to predict what would happen in the future. They wouldn't be able to control the situation. Lin Feng, the executioner heaven, the Xintian Bureau, the Bell of Fortune, the Taishu Taoist, the Hao Hian Mirror, and Sakyamuni Buddha. This was the strongest lineup in the history of the human world. Even against two Yao Kings, as long as they were willing to pay the price, they would be able to kill them all. The fact that Lin Feng was able to suppress and seal the extreme Emperor's divine abyss, the most powerful escape technique, was already a pleasant surprise for Lord Taishu and Gautama Buddha. Compared to Juehuang Xuanshang, Jihuang Xinyuan had a higher chance of escaping, whether it was in terms of personality or Yao Qi. Being able to trap him and force him into a fight to the death was undoubtedly an extremely difficult task. But Lin Feng and Jihuang Xinyuan were in a fight to the death. Even if Lin Feng managed to kill the Extreme King, he would still be heavily injured. Based on what the Extreme King was doing right now, it was very likely that both sides would die together. At this time, the damaged Xintian Bureau and Book of Destruction might still be useful. Although they might not be able to use them in a short period of time, at the level of the Taishu Taoist and Gautama Buddha, there was still hope. If he fought against Juehuang Xianshang in this sort of situation, there was still hope that he could kill him. From this point of view, watching Juehuang Xianshang destroy that ominous sword that clearly had the power to destroy the world was not a bad choice. This sword was especially so vicious. If he wanted to destroy it, even Juehuang Xianshang would most likely have to pay a price. This was undoubtedly more advantageous to the subsequent battles. However, the battle situation could change in an instant, and the slightest mistake could result in a completely different outcome. Lin Feng was fighting the Extreme King's divine abyss to the death. Although he had the upper hand in sealing the Extreme King's divine abyss, if he retreated, the Extreme King's divine abyss would retaliate, and the tables would be turned. But no one could predict what Lin Feng would do if he saw the Sky Destroyer destroyed, and if the Taishu Taoist and Gautama Buddha did not do anything. If he were to release the Extreme Emperor's divine abyss at the risk of being heavily injured, then abandon everything else and escape with the Shintian Bureau and the Bell of Creation, Lord Taishu and the ancestral Buddha would be in deep trouble. At the very least, if the two demonic emperors were injured, even if they could not win, they could leave whenever they wanted. The dragon returned to the Shinhai, and the ape returned to the spiritual mountain. That was a completely different situation. The Taishu Taoist gaze was deep. In an instant, he had already made his decision. He gently clapped his hand in the air, and the Haotian mirror lit up the chaotic void. Billions of mirror images appeared in the void, then condensed into a single beam that shot towards Juehuang Xianshang. Above the 9 heavens imperial court, in the 10th heaven imperial court, a mysterious and formless air current descended from above, merging with the light of the Haotian mirror. The mirror light suddenly darkened, illuminating the past and present as it landed on Juehuang Xianshang's body. Even with Juehuang Xianshang's strength, his body slowed slightly in the void. Gautama Buddha looked at this scene quietly. He put his palms together and activated the 3 lives karma mantra. Instantly, countless illusory lines appeared in the primal chaos. They crisscrossed and intersected with each other, making them difficult to grasp. There were countless nodes on these countless threads, each extending into the void. There was no end in sight, as if they were connecting the past and the future. The many threads of karma wrapped around Juehuang Xianshang's body. As soon as they came into contact with the giant dragon's body, the threads of karma immediately changed. The originally illusory threads of karma suddenly condensed and took on different forms. Some were as black as ink, some were as red as blood, some were multicolored. Juehuang Xianshang's movements became even slower as the threads of karma wrapped around him. Juehuang Xianshang let out a long howl, and the scales on his body opened and closed. Golden light shone continuously, isolating the Haotian mirror's light. But when the golden light landed on the threads of karma, the effects weren't very obvious. There were still threads wrapped around him. As the threads of karma wrapped around him, the dragon's aura and golden light on his body began to dim. Countless images flashed in Juehuang's eyes, as if he was experiencing the lives of countless lives. The river of time unfurled in front of him, its end nowhere in sight. The past was complicated, and the future was even more difficult to see. Juehuang Xianshang let out a shocking dragon roar. Within his sea of consciousness, the giant body of the heavenly dragon fell into the river of time and fate. He opened his mouth and sucking in large amounts of the illusory river of time and fate. As the dragon sucked in water, the river of time and fate became illusory and unreal. Juehuang Xianshang's eyes became clearer, and the flashing images gradually disappeared. At that moment, the great 1,000 worlds, whether it was the divine land or infinite wasteland, were all shaking violently. Threads of karma seemed to appear above the heads of all living beings, intersecting with each other in the world. Juehuang Xianshang seemed to have become the great 1,000 worlds at that moment, bearing countless threads of karma. He didn't dissolve them. He didn't distinguish them. He just carried them. Even if there were thousands of threads of karma, they were all matters of this world. They didn't escape the great 1,000 worlds. As the scales on Juehuang's body opened and closed, golden light shone nonstop. He began to absorb billions of threads of karma into his body. The threads of karma were dispelled by the majestic golden light. Gautama looked at this scene with a calm expression. Juehuang's response was within his expectations. Although Juehuang Xian had to spend more effort to deal with the 3 lives karma curse than Jihuang Xinyuan, he was a peak great demon who had reached the immortal realm. His true form was closely connected to the great 1,000 worlds, so it wasn't surprising that he had such a method. However, no matter how strong Juehuang was, he still hadn't truly transformed into the great 1,000 worlds. Accepting the threads of karma into his body was still a burden to him, and he couldn't have it as easy as Jihuang Xinyuan. A shocking dragon roar resounded through the 3 worlds as Juehuang Xianshang resisted the 3 lives karma curse, forcibly breaking free from the Haotian mirror's light, and then he continued to pounce towards the Sky Destroyer's sword. Taishu Taoist was silent for a moment. His figure turned in the void, and he entered the Haotian mirror's light. Then, he instantly appeared in front of Juehuang Xianshang. He was everywhere in time and space, and the wonders of being everywhere varied from person to person. Lin Feng had it, the Taishu Taoist had it, the Haotian mirror had it, Juehuang Xianshang and Jihuang Xinyuan also had it. However, the area where the Spirit Sea intersected with the Dead Sea and the Great Thousand Worlds had been turned into a chaotic mess. Aside from the Haotian mirror, everyone else had lost this wonder. But at this moment, the Taishu Taoist figure had completely merged with the Haotian mirror's light, and he instantly became like the Haotian mirror, covering all time and space. Juehuang Xianshang snorted coldly when he saw this. Golden light spread out from his body, as if he had opened up a realm. Wherever the golden light passed, the chaotic space and time immediately returned to normal. Taishu Taoist and the Haotian mirror's figures disappeared once again. Just like Gautama Buddha, with his cultivation realm, even if he did not have this wonder of being in all time and space, he still had the ability to suppress the other party's transformation. But with this slight delay, the Taishu Taoist formed a seal with his hand, and the Haotian mirror covered the sky. Rays of mirror light descended from all directions, squeezing the golden realm around Juehuang Xianshang's body into the center. Juehuang Xianshang moved forward, and the rays of mirror light continued to shatter. But soon, the rays of other treasured mirrors came to replace them, making it difficult for Juehuang Xianshang to move forward. At the same time, a huge lotus appeared under Gautama Buddha's body. Many green lotuses bloomed around the lotus, and beyond it, many saha flowers bloomed. In each saha flower, there was a Zen master, a bhikkhu, a upai, a upasai, a holy monk, an arhat, Kitagarbha, or a bodhisattva sitting inside, chanting Buddhist scriptures and chanting Buddhist names. Endless light filled the void. It was Gautama Buddha using his own power to manifest the Saha world in the center. The Saha world in the center pressed down on Juehuang Xianshang. It was as big as Mount Sumeru and as heavy as 1,000 worlds. The eyes of the dragon progenitor were extremely cold at that moment, and at the same time, blazing anger surged. Juehuang Xianshang was already planning to take the attack head-on, then break through the encirclement and deal with the heaven-punishing sword first. The huge dragon tail suddenly swung in the void. The entire 1,000 worlds trembled as if they were about to be split again. The dragon tail struck the Saha world in the center, and the entire world immediately retreated in chaos. At the same time, the light from the clear sky mirror pressed down on the golden light around Juehuang Xianshang under the control of Tao Paragon of Taishu's power. It froze Juehuang Xianshang in place, and the golden light kept shattering. At that moment, Lin Feng's voice suddenly came from the Xiantian Eternal Light Grotto Heaven on Jade Capital Mountain. He chuckled and said, "Fellow Taoists, are you interested in joining my Xiantian Bureau?" Lin Feng sat in the air above the chessboard. His body was covered in red stains, and some parts of his purple robe were even torn. But his expression was normal, and there was even a hint of a smile on his lips. Chapter 1469. Lin Feng sat on the chessboard with a leisurely expression. His gaze pierced through the air and looked at Juehuang Xianshang, Tao Paragon Taishu, and the Buddha who were outside the dark heaven's time light grotto heaven. His body was covered in red stains. He had been injured by Jihuang Xinyuan's demonic energy, and his aura was declining uncontrollably. Juehuang Xianshang stared coldly at Lin Feng. The Taishu Taoist and the Buddha's gazes also landed on Lin Feng. Although Lin Feng had the upper hand against Jihuang Xinyuan, he was still in a dangerous situation. The extreme Emperor's divine abyss could drag them into mutual destruction at any moment. However, Lin Feng did not seem to care. He only watched Lin Feng silently as Juehuang Xianshang fought against the Taishu Taoist and the Buddha on the other side of the battlefield. He smiled faintly and pointed at the Book of Destruction in front of him. The Book of Destruction swayed slightly in the air and turned back into the bell of creation. A melodious bell chime resounded through the universe. The bell of creation flickered and turned into a huge pitch-black stone door. Its surface was covered in thousands of relief carvings. It was ancient and desolate, but it exuded a strong aura of life. The stone door opened to both sides, and a sea of primal qi poured out and landed on Lin Feng's body. In an instant, the red stains on Lin Feng's body faded at a speed visible to the naked eye. Lin Feng's clothes had already started to tear. That was the external manifestation of his nascent spirit being corroded by Jihuang Xinyuan's demonic energy. But now, as the red stains faded, the damage on Lin Feng's body also started to recover rapidly. His aura of magic also started to recover rapidly. With the support of the powerful life aura of the Gate of Creation, the damage caused by Jihuang Xinyuan quickly disappeared. Seeing this scene, Jihuang Xinyuan felt that it was a pity, but at the same time, he heaved a sigh of relief. In the end, Lin Feng didn't want to perish together with him. He was forced to be a step more conservative. Under these circumstances, he, who was originally at a disadvantage, could finally turn the situation around. The Bell of Creation had turned into the Gate of Creation, and the powerful power of rebirth had helped Lin Feng resolve the destruction caused by Jihuang Xinyuan's demonic power. However, without the destructive aura of the Book of Destruction, Lin Feng could still fight against Jihuang Xinyuan with just his own transcendence energy in the Shintian game, but it was impossible for him to continue to suppress and seal the great demon sovereign. Jihuang Xinyuan raised his head to the sky and let out a long howl. His figure shot forward, preparing to charge out of the Shintian Bureau. However, while Lin Feng was activating the Tai Chi Myriad Source Chi, he was also changing his hand seals. Suddenly, he wrote a mysterious rune in the void. The runes suddenly expanded and turned into tens of thousands of runes that intertwined and arranged in the void. Then, they turned into a huge and complicated array. It was the yin and yang life and death array. The yin and yang life and death array formed by Lin Feng's transcendence energy continued to operate in the Shintian time light utopia. Meanwhile, outside the Shintian time light utopia, the real yin and yang life and death array, together with the Grand Imperial Palace, finally flew above Shoichi-Dashin and the others and returned to Lin Feng's side. After the real array and the virtual array merged, it covered the sky and fell towards the chessboard. The Grand Imperial Palace shone brightly in it, looking majestic. Jihuang Xinyuan frowned slightly. With just this, it wasn't enough to continue to suppress and seal him. As expected, the next moment, Lin Feng waved his sleeve, and balls of light flew out from his sleeve one after another, turning into 6 huge doors. All 6 Starseed doors gathered in the Shintian time-light utopia at this moment. Jihuang Xinyuan and even Juehuang Xianshang, who was outside the Shintian time-light utopia, watched this scene with narrowed eyes. Apart from the ancient era, the ancient Starseed had always been a sacred cultivation ground for the monster race. At the same time, it was also the residence of the monster race's Saint Emperors. Be it Juehuang Xianshang or Jihuang Xinyuan, both of them had once occupied it. But now all of these Starseed doors had fallen into the hands of a human cultivator. The extreme Emperor's divine abyss's eyes flashed with blood-red light, and he suddenly let out a wild roar. Red ripples that were almost tangible spread out in all directions, even beyond the Shintian obelisk and onto the 6 starry gates. In the ancient star sea, the stars were flashing and the universe was shaking. Countless stars were shaking. On Jihuang Xinyuan's body, the stars lit up again and floated in the blood-red light. It was like a red sea of stars, resonating with the real ancient star sea. At this moment, the 6-star ocean gates were glowing with red light at the same time. In the blink of an eye, Ji Huang Xinyuan looked like he was about to take control of the Star Sea doors. Ji Huang Xinyuan was a peak great monster of the immortal realm and one of the 3 strongest monster emperors in the history of the Heaven Yuan race. He was far more terrifying than anyone could imagine. The human cultivators outside the Xintian Timelight Utopia felt their hearts clench when they saw this. Although they didn't like the fact that the Star Sea had fallen into Lin Feng's hands. If Ji Huang Xinyuan took it back, it would be a nightmare for the human race. Even Jue Huang Xianshang's cold, dignified eyes flickered slightly when he saw this. But just as Ji Huang Xinyuan was about to succeed, he suddenly frowned. His blood-red eyes darkened, and the ears on both sides of his head twitched a few times. Even in such a battle of life and death, Ji Huang Xinyuan didn't lose his cool. He used his all-seeing eyes and all-hearing mystiques to their limits to see even the tiniest details and find a better chance of winning. It's a trap. In the nick of time, the extreme Emperor Divine Abyss retracted its demonic energy and watched as the 6 starry gates slid past its hand. There was no need to mention the pain and conflict, regret and reluctance, anger and depression in his heart. But Ji Huang Xinyuan still forced himself to calm down and rein in the horse at the edge of the cliff. Beside the Star Sea gates, Lin Feng chuckled. "You're quite alert." He didn't say anything else. He reached out and pointed, and the 6 Star Sea gates sank into the yin and yang life and death formation. At this moment, the changes of life and death, the changes of heaven and earth, the changes of eternity, the changes of yin and yang, the changes of light and darkness, and the changes of illusion and reality were all activated at the same time. The yin and yang 6 transformations were all activated to their limits. The 6 Star Sea gates each landed in a changing world. When the gates opened, a vast amount of starlight was drawn by the yin and yang life and death formation and gushed out of the gates. The Grand Imperial Palace sat at the core of the formation. The towering immortal palace split into 6 vast streams of light. They were like commanders that connected to the 6 Star Sea gates, causing the 6 gates to be closely connected to the entire formation. In the next moment, the yin and yang life and death formation activated, and a large amount of starlight energy in the Star Sea was continuously extracted from it. Lin Feng smiled. "Fellow Taoist may be vigilant, but to me, at most, it's just me spending a bit more effort. Fellow Taoist, just obediently stay in my Xintian bureau." Ji Huang Xinyuan's eyes narrowed. As the huge formation activated, its power became greater and greater. The endless light gradually turned into endless starlight, like the real stars in the sky. The endless universe pressed down on him. Within the formation, thousands of formation patterns changed continuously. The formation's theory was undergoing a drastic change. Lin Feng flicked his fingers, and streams of mana entered it. In the center of the formation, above the Grand Imperial Palace, it gradually turned into a huge Tai Chi diagram that led the formation to operate. At that moment, this grand formation could no longer be called the yin and yang life and death formation. It had been upgraded to the Tai Chi Heavenly Cycle Stars formation. When Juehuang Xianshang, the Taishu Taoist, and the Buddha saw this Tai Chi Heavenly Cycle Stars formation, their eyes sparkled. This formation was mysterious and unfathomable. Disregarding everything else, just the fact that it could mobilize a large amount of power from the desolate ancient Star Sea, as if it could turn the Star Sea into a formation and descend into this world, was enough to make all the top elites in Divine Origin Realm look at it. It was difficult for a person to activate the power of the Star Sea and use it on a target. The power of the starlight that surged out of the Star Sea gate was limited. It was not like now, where it was absorbed into the formation by Lin Feng and used in large amounts. Although it could not directly fight the enemy, it provided endless power to the Tai Chi Heavenly Cycle Stars formation. This was the result of Lin Feng's comprehension of the Star Sea. He combined it with the 6 Star Sea gates and his own unique divine ability, changing universe, to create this formation. It upgraded the yin and yang life and death formation into the Tai Chi heavenly cycle stars formation. The stars in the sky fell towards the chessboard, infused with the power of the Xiantian layout. With the support of Lin Feng's Tai Chi all-life Qi, it continued to suppress and seal Ji Huang Xinyuan. Ji Huang Xinyuan was alert and did not fall into an even more difficult situation, but the momentum of jumping out of the Xiantian layout was instantly stopped once again, and Lin Feng was forced back into the chessboard. At that moment, Ji Huang Xinyuan's blood-red eyes were filled with a seriousness that had never been seen before. His demonic power tried to counterattack Lin Feng, but the effects were continuously being recovered by the life creation gate. At that moment, Ji Huang Xinyuan, one of the top 3 strongest in Heaven Origin World and the ruler of Heaven Origin World, had to admit one thing no matter how unwilling he was. The opponent he was facing now was truly above him. The purple-robed young man in front of him had the ability to kill him. Even if he wanted to perish together with Lin Feng, the hope was getting smaller and smaller. Lin Feng, who had combined the Xiantian layout, the Bell of Fate, and the Tai Chi Heavenly Cycle Stars formation, had become the strongest expert in the history of Heaven Origin World. No one could defeat him in a one-on-one fight. Even emperors of heavenly origin like the extreme Emperor's Divine Abyss could only fight to the death in the Deep Abyss Mountain when it was at its peak. Outside the Xiantian Time Cave, the extremely weak Shoichi Dashin and Dao Master Xian finally escaped from the Yin and Yang return to Origin Magical Realm with the help of Taoist Master Xian. They looked at the scene in front of them in shock and speechless. Even though they were at a disadvantage in the Battle of the Spirit Sea, the Haotian Mirror had successfully recovered, and the plan that they had no confidence in had been carried out successfully. They had opened up the path to the Dead Sea. Taishu Temple had done their best this time. Even though the return of Jua Huang Xianshang and Ji Huang Xinyuan made the situation look bad, even without the return of the 2 demon emperors, the people of Taishu Temple had to face a terrifying reality. In his current state, even if the Taishu Taoist returned from the Dead Sea, he would not be able to suppress Lin Feng. The appearance of the Book of Destruction had already made their hearts heavy. Now, when they saw the Xiantian layout and the Tai Chi Heavenly Cycle Stars formation, even Taoist Master Xian, and the others could not help but feel helpless. Moreover, everyone looked to the side. In the whirlpool where the Dead Sea and the Spirit Sea intersected, the ferocious sword will grew stronger and stronger. Lin Feng, who was fighting against Ji Huang Xinyuan, was not even in his strongest state. Chapter 1470. Jue Huang Xuanshang's eyes shone brightly as he looked at Lin Feng with an even colder gaze. The Taishu Taoist expression was calm, but his gaze was somewhat illusory, making it even more difficult for others to guess what he was thinking. As for the Gautama Buddha, his gaze towards Lin Feng was filled with an indescribable meaning. He stared at Lin Feng for a long time without saying a word. Previously, Lin Feng had only used the Book of Destruction to shake him and the future glazed Buddha Master off the sky-reaching pagoda. Although he had sensed Lin Feng's strength, it had not been as intense as it was now. He was proficient in the 3 lives karma curse. He could see the past, present, and future. In terms of divination, he could be said to be the top figure in the history of the great heaven primal world. But Lin Feng and the Gautama Buddha had not been able to see through him. He could vaguely see through the Taiji heavenly cycle star formation, but the appearance of the Xiantian Bureau had completely exceeded his expectations. As an immortal realm expert who had personally fought with Ji Huang Xinyuan, the Gautama Buddha had a deep understanding of Ji Huang Xinyuan's strength. But it is precisely this great demon emperor whose name goes down in history, writing down legends, that is now being suppressed by Lin Feng, unable to escape. He has just returned from the endless unknown, but right now he may shockingly face another death. When he had fought with the Gautama Buddha, Lin Feng had held back too many things. Looking at it now, it was even more shocking. Silently, the Gautama Buddha looked at Lin Feng. His calm eyes glowed with a glassy light. Lin Feng's gaze also turned towards the Taishu Taoist, the Gautama Buddha, and Jue Huang Xuanshang. He smiled and repeated, "Fellow Taoists, are you interested in joining my Xintian Bureau?" Compared to the bloody battle with the extreme Emperor's divine abyss, Lin Feng seemed to be more at ease right now. Bringing up the old topic had a greater impact on everyone present. His gaze swept past the Taishu Taoist and the Gautama Buddha, then towards the intersection of the Dead Sea and Spirit Sea, where he had once again sealed the heaven-punishing sword. Lin Feng had a faint smile on his lips. He looked at the Taishu Taoist and the Gautama Buddha without saying anything. The Taishu Taoist gaze also swept past Lin Feng, Jue Huang Xuanshang, and the heaven-punishing sword. After a brief silence, the Taishu Taoist said, "Fellow Taoist, your Xintian Bureau is so mysterious. I also yearn for it." With that, the Taishu Taoist formed a seal with both hands. A Tao fruit slowly formed in front of him. Black and white qi intertwined and spun. Rays of golden light flashed and gathered together. The Tai and Void arts seemed to become one at this moment, forming a Tao fruit that described the mysteries of the world. When the Tao fruit appeared, the light in the Spirit Sea pulsed, and the Tao of the world hummed together. Taoist Lord Daoi, Shoichi Dashin, Taoist Lord Xian and the others all trembled. The latter too fared better, but Taoist Lord Daoi's body trembled violently. His nascent divinity was momentarily unable to maintain its human form. He abruptly opened his eyes, revealing the scar that had sliced his eyes open. At this moment, it was clearly twisting as rays of light surged out from within. Lin Daohan in the Spirit Sea, as well as Quang Hung and the other Taishu temple cultivators of White Cloud Mountain in the divine land of the boundless world, all trembled. In the void of the boundless world, one could vaguely see rays of light shuttling back and forth like the Spirit Sea. When Lin Feng and Gautama Buddha saw this, their eyes lit up. Even Jue Huang Xuanshang, who was fighting with the Taishu Taoist, narrowed his eyes. Then the Taishu Taoist pointed with a finger. The Tao fruit was stimulated by the heavenly arts of the heavens. The mysterious, invisible airflow became even more ethereal. It spread out in the world and turned into rays of light of the great Tao. It was not the great Tao of the world that manifested in the Spirit Sea. Instead, it was as if another world of creation had appeared out of thin air. A brand new great Tao of the world appeared in front of everyone. When these streams of light appeared in the chaotic space-time, they actually collided with the Spirit Sea, just like the Dead Sea. The rays of the great Tao covered the chaotic space, passing through one Haotian mirror after another. The Haotian mirror, which existed in all space-time, became the light ray of the great Tao created by the Taishu Taoist. It was the bridge that connected the Spirit Sea and the heaven primal world. The two sides gradually merged together. Their power became even more majestic as it pressed down on Jue Huang Xuanshang. Even with the strength of Jue Huang Xuanshang's divine abilities and demonic power, he was forced back by the sudden explosion of power. The Taishu Taoist and the Haotian mirror merged together. They really wanted to push Jue Huang Xuanshang into Jade Capital Mountain, into the Xintian Time Grotto Heaven, and into Lin Feng's Xintian Bureau. Jue Huang Xuanshang roared coldly. The scales on his body opened and closed, and rays of golden light surged out. In the golden sea, countless stars floated up from the bottom of the sea. They flashed with dazzling light and exuded vigorous power. It was as if a golden universe had appeared in front of everyone. Boundless power surged out of Jue Huang Xuanshang's body. The huge heavenly dragon body that was like a world moved and stirred up boundless power. At this moment, if one wanted to find a true embodiment of the word power, it would be Jue Huang Xuanshang. Unlike Ji Huang Xinyuan's extreme agility, Jue Huang Xuanshang was superior in terms of pure physical strength. He was the most powerful existence in the history of the heaven primal world. Boundless demonic power and the power of the golden universe filled Jue Xuanshang's body. Even though he had lost the upper hand and was suppressed by the Taishu Taoist and the Haotian mirror, it only took an instant for the dragon progenitor to forcibly stop his retreating figure. No matter how profound your concepts are, no matter how much you resonate with the universe, I will use my ultimate power to destroy everything. It was a great power that surpassed common sense, understanding, and reason. It twisted the laws of the universe. As the strongest existence among the first living beings born when the heaven primal world was created, Jue Xuanshang possessed all sorts of great Daos of the universe. He was like the incarnation of Daos. The powerful dragon progenitor floated above Jade Capital Mountain, blocking the pressure from the Taishu Taoist and the Haotian mirror. He coiled up slightly and swung his dragon tail to the side. His huge dragon head faced the Taishu Taoist. His entire body looked like an infinitely large Tao character. Apart from the seemingly unreasonable pure power, it was extremely profound. The Taishu Taoist had once fought against Jue Xuanshang and even personally sent him to his death, so he was no stranger to this. In the face of Jue Xuanshang's cold gaze, the Taishu Taoist's expression remained the same. His palms continuously formed seals, and one Tao fruit after another flew into the air. Their power was added to the Haotian mirror, and he used the power of the art of heaven to fuse with the power of the Haotian mirror to fight against Jue Xuanshang. He looked at Sakyamuni Buddha and said calmly, "Fellow Taoist, you and I stopped the two of them from returning, but you have already suffered under Jihuang Xinyuan's hands. The karma between us has been settled. Fellow Taoist, what do you plan to do next?" The power Lin Feng suddenly displayed exceeded everyone's expectations. In this situation, if the Buddha stood by the side and did not do anything, the two great Taoist emperors would naturally not take the initiative to cause trouble for him. Sakyamuni Buddha's gaze was peaceful and calm. He turned his head to look at heaven punishing sword and asked, "Fellow Taoist, have you decided?" The Taishu Taoist smiled and did not say anything. After a moment of silence, Sakyamuni Buddha looked at Lin Feng and said silently, "I have lost." With that, he took a step forward and arrived above Jue Xuanshang's body. He then sat down in the lotus position. The huge Buddha descended on Jue Xuanshang's head. The five wisdom kings above Sakyamuni Buddha's head disappeared. The pure land of true lust, pure land of victory, pure land of bliss, pure land of karma, and pure land of joy merged into one, forming a whirling world in the center. Together with Sakyamuni Buddha, they suppressed Jue Xuanshang. Jue Xuanshang, who was in a deadlock with the Taishu Taoist and the power of the Haotian mirror, could not help but frown. Normally, he could not care less. But right now, if he was suppressed by Sakyamuni Buddha's pure land, the weight of that world could really push him into the Xiantian universe's time, light, grotto heaven, and the Xiantian Bureau. Even though Lin Feng was still suppressing and sealing Jihuang Xinyuan, he was at a disadvantage when he fell into the enemy's territory. Jue Xuanshang let out a long cry that shook the 9 heavens. Dragon Emperor Heavenly Voice. The true Dragon Emperor Heavenly Voice that belonged to the ancestor of the dragon race, the supreme emperor of the dragon race. The Dragon Emperor Heavenly Voice that originated from its creator, the strongest dragon race in history. As the Dragon Emperor Heavenly Voice echoed, Jue Xuanshang's power exploded. He would rather suffer a small loss than force back the Taishu Taoist and the Haotian mirror. He would not give them a chance to work together with the Buddha to suppress him into the Xiantian Bureau. But as the dragon's cry resounded through Tian Yuan, a soft laugh suddenly came from the Xiantian universe's time-light grotto heaven. "Fellow Taoist, please wait." A mysterious river flowed out of the gate of life creation above Lin Feng's head. It seemed like the flow of time, but it also seemed like time had stopped at this moment. The gate of life creation disappeared, and the bell of creation turned into the river of time. It suddenly rushed out of the grotto heaven and wrapped around Jue Xuanshang. Jue Xuanshang let out a shocking roar. He froze for a moment, unable to break free from the Taishu Taoist and the Hao Yin mirror. The Buddha sat in the middle of the whirling world and suppressed him. The river of time within the Xiantian universe's time, light, grotto heaven retracted like a rope. It forcefully dragged Juehuang Xian Shang, who was being suppressed by the Taishu Taoist, the Hao Yin mirror, and the Buddha. Within the grotto heaven, Lin Feng smiled and said, "Welcome, fellow Taoists." He clapped his hands lightly, and the Taiji heavenly cycle stars formation unfolded. Under the guidance of the river of time, the three experts were dragged into the formation. The chessboard of the Xiantian Bureau's main body shook slightly. As light flashed, Juehuang Xian Shang fell into it. Coming into contact with the Xiantian Bureau and entering the Xiantian universe's time-light grotto heaven, the eyes of the Taishu Taoist and the Buddha flashed at the same time. The eyes of the two, who were usually indifferent and unperturbed, now shone with a shocking light. Their gazes swept across the Xiantian universe's time, light, grotto heaven, and the Xiantian Bureau. The Taishu Taoist muttered to himself, "Could it be, at this moment, even Juehuang Xian Shang and Jihuang Xinyuan were no longer important in the eyes of the Taishu Taoist?" In this moment of absent-mindedness, he stopped outside the Xiantian Bureau. The Buddha did the same. The two demon sovereigns in the Xiantian Bureau roared in unison and launched a powerful attack on Lin Feng and the Xiantian Bureau. Lin Feng saw the changes in the Taishu Taoist and the Buddha, but he was not surprised. He laughed and faced the attack of the two demon sovereigns alone. Chapter 1471. The Taishu Taoist and the Buddhist ancestors split their attention between the various existences in the Xiantian time light, grotto heaven, and the Xiantian Bureau. Was it not the same for Juehuang Xian Shang and Jihuang Xinyuan? However, now that they had entered the Xiantian time light paradise and the Xiantian Bureau, they were in a life and death crisis. They could only focus on escaping first. End Emperor Xianshang had also been suppressed into profound heaven Tipo, but because of that, Lin Feng had lost the power of the Taishu Taoist, the Hao Yin mirror, and Gautama Buddha. Although they were technically mortal enemies, the two demon emperors were not afraid of joining forces to break out of the Xiantian Bureau first. A mighty dragon roar and a shocking ape howl rose at the same time. Juehuang Xianshang and Jihuang Xinyuan stirred up a storm in profound heaven Tipo. In the history of the heaven primal world, the three strongest demon kings ruled over different eras. They stood at the peak of their eras and looked down on the world. Over the long years, whether it was Juehuang Xianshang or Jihuang Xinyuan, just one of them was enough to make the heaven primal world tremble. Even though they'd perished, no matter which one of them perished, they'd practically been buried along with most of the peak experts of their generation. Moreover, throughout the course of their lives, they'd personally sent countless powerful existences to their deaths, causing them to vanish forever in the annals of history. And on this day, at this very moment, a terrifying scene that had never happened in history appeared in front of Lin Feng. Be it the demon world of infinite mainland or the human world of the divine land, no one had ever faced two of the strongest demon emperors at the same time like this. In the face of Juehuang Xianshang and Jihuang Xinyuan's attacks, even the Xiantian tiebreaker, which was incomparably profound, seemed to be on the verge of being torn apart. Within the Taiji heavenly cycle stars formation that enveloped the chessboard, rays of light continuously flickered. Countless stars vanished in the universe's sea of stars without even making a sound. Lin Feng watched this calmly. He stretched out his hands, and a Taiji symbol appeared on each of his palms. Slowly they spun. The river of time once again transformed into the bell of creation, ringing above his head with a melodious sound that shook the heavens. In a trance, the bell of fortune once again revealed the appearance of the Book of Destruction. The pages of the book flipped rapidly, and one after another, streams of destructive aura rushed out of the Book of Destruction and landed in Lin Feng's palm. The Taiji heavenly origin treasure light merged with the myriad chi of creation. Large amounts of Taiji heavenly origin chi surged out and merged with the book of chi of destruction. Two balls of air that resembled primal chaos appeared in Lin Feng's left and right palms, facing the mysterious heaven bureau below. The indistinct masses of air fluctuated and suddenly turned into two hazy masses of light, which gradually formed two halos. These two halos of light seemed to originate from the same source. They rapidly extended out one halo after another, each forming a line that descended upon the two demon sovereigns within the Shintian Bureau. Within the Taiji heavenly cycle stars formation, the Taiji symbol continued to spin, guiding the stars in the universe to pour energy into the Shintian diagram. The chessboard of the Shintian diagram trembled slightly. The sloppy old man in front of the chessboard was still in a daze. Slowly, he stretched out his hands and placed them on the edges of the chessboard, trying to stabilize it. Jue Huang Xianshang and Ji Huang Shenyuan frowned slightly when they saw the Tao of light descending from Lin Feng's palms. With a mighty roar, Jue Huang suddenly turned around and circled within the Shintian diagram. His enormous dragon head faced Lin Feng, and the Tao of light smashed into Jue Huang's head. A profound rune appeared on the enormous dragon head. It looked like the character for Tao. The golden light and the auspicious clouds of Draconic might all gathered together to form the character for Tao. As soon as the character appeared, it immediately resisted the Tao of light that came from Lin Feng's palms. The rings of light were like ripples on water, and when they came into contact with the word Tao, they shattered one after another. Jue Huang Xianshang was unharmed, but the Shintian diagram and the Taiji heavenly cycle stars formation were still working together to keep him firmly pinned to the chessboard. On the other side, Ji Huang Shenyuan suddenly took a deep breath. His body suddenly became somewhat illusory, and the red mist around him seemed to become much thinner. But as he moved, he seemed to become infinitely small. He actually burrowed into the Tao of light that Lin Feng had activated. The Tao of light seemed to form a path, and Ji Huang Shenyuan used this opportunity to quickly pass through it. He actually wanted to use this chance to escape the Shintian diagram. With Jue Huang Xianshang helping him hold back Lin Feng and the Shintian diagram's power, Ji Huang Shenyuan used his eye of heaven and ear of heaven and extreme agility to their limits. He was about to break free from the Shintian diagram's restraints. Although he had been at a disadvantage in the previous exchange and was already injured, Ji Huang Shenyuan's spirit chi was still extremely powerful. He was able to accurately grasp every opportunity. The Tao of light shrank together, but Ji Huang Shenyuan's body became extremely small. It was as if he didn't exist at all. No matter how much the Tao of light shrank, it was unable to completely lock him down. Lin Feng saw this, and a Tao fruit appeared in his left palm. The Extreme King's eyes flashed with blood-red light, and his ears twitched. He could keenly sense that the Tai Chi heavenly cycle stars formation's power was starting to flow into the Tao of light, combining with Lin Feng's spirit chi and the power of the destruction calligraphy. The Tao of light shrunk even more clearly. Streams of Tao light pulsed within them, but more streams of Tao light appeared every now and then. The power of the Tao of light became more and more profound, and it actually started to interfere with Ji Huang Shenyuan's spirit chi, trying to force him to reappear. The other end of the Tao of light extended into the Shintian diagram, and it even activated the Shintian diagram's power to press towards Ji Huang Shenyuan from behind. At the same time, the mysterious point in Lin Feng's palm expanded in the void. It instantly turned into an eternal light of calamity, and it shot towards Ji Huang Shenyuan. The mysterious and domineering light of calamity also passed through the Tao of light, and it shot towards Ji Huang Shenyuan. The two of them happened to meet in the middle of the Tao of light. The Extreme King frowned. His figure flashed, and the blood-red mist around him thickened again. Boundless spirit chi burst forth. A red figure streaked across the void and landed back in the Shintian diagram. dodging Lin Feng's eternal light of calamity. Jihuang Xinyuan's eyes were cold, and he didn't feel discouraged at all. The red mist around him spread in all directions, and it infected the chessboard. Juehuang Xianshang, who was also on the chessboard, suddenly let out a long cry. The heavenly melody of the Dragon Emperor was activated, and it shook the entire Xiantian diagram. The two peerless great demons exerted their power together, and the violent power immediately turned the Xiantian diagram upside down. Lin Feng's expression was normal. He stood up from within the Tai Chi heavenly cycle stars formation, and with a wave of his sleeves, he took the Book of Destruction and stepped into the Xiantian diagram. After entering the Xiantian diagram, Lin Feng touched the Book of Destruction, and it turned back into the River of Time. At the same time, Lin Feng pointed again, and another eternal light of calamity shot out. This eternal light of calamity was connected to the River of Time, and it became even more profound and majestic, but also became even more domineering and difficult to defend against. As the light swept past, the chess pieces within the Xiantian diagram also moved rapidly. It was as if the Tao was changing and the world was changing. The Tai Chi heavenly cycle stars formation and the Xiantian diagram worked together, and the stars lit up, then dimmed, then brightened again, flashing incessantly as countless stars were created and destroyed. Many powerful intents melded into one and swept towards the Extreme King's divine abyss. The Extreme King's divine abyss felt as if its connection to the great heaven primal world had been severed, and it found itself in a completely foreign world. Even worse, this independent and foreign world was fiercely suppressing him, as if the entire world was its enemy. Jihuang Xinyuan frowned. As he tried to move, he once again felt sluggish. The blood mist around him spread out, and endless starlight flashed within it. It was as if he had turned into a red sea of stars, and he just barely resisted the suppression of the world in front of him. On the other side, Zhuohuang Xianshang was also being suppressed by the eternal light of calamity. The giant Tao, character on the dragon's head, shone brightly, shining with golden light that illuminated the world. Every beam of golden light seemed to contain the infinite truths of the world. Lin Feng suddenly moved forward, his index and middle fingers forming a sword. A profound sword light shot out from his fingertip towards Juehuang Xianshang's forehead. The sword light suddenly spread out, also manifesting the infinite truths of the great Tao as it clashed with Juehuang Xianshang. It was Lin Feng's single origin Tao sword. It was even more powerful than the Nine Heavens divine sword and the heavenly immortal sword Qi. One sword to birth all, one sword to destroy all. When Lin Feng's sword light touched it, the giant Tao character on Juehuang Xianshang's dragon head dimmed a little. Although the Tao character's light did not fade, it was inevitably at a disadvantage against the suppression of the Xiantian diagram, the Tai Chi heavenly cycle stars formation, and the River of Time. Juehuang's eyes were cold. Without a word, he clawed at the approaching Lin Feng. As his claw descended, several shocking cracks appeared in the space-time of the Xiantian diagram. The ancestor of the dragon race was the strongest in the history of heaven origin. The power of his claw truly had the power to tear apart the universe. A Tao fruit appeared in front of Lin Feng. It was mysterious and unfathomable. It was the beginning of all things, and it was also the end of all things. Even Juehuang Xianshang's powerful strength, which could distort the laws of the world, was frozen in midair. But at this moment, Jihuang Xinyuan, who seemed to be at a disadvantage because of his injuries, suddenly let out a heaven-shaking roar. The blood-colored sea of stars around him stirred up a boundless tide that suddenly erupted at this moment. The giant white ape displayed an unprecedented explosive power as it leapt up. However, there was not the slightest hint of violence or savagery. Instead, it was ethereal and light as it leapt out of the Xiantian bureau. The Xiantian diagram was locked in a stalemate with Juehuang Xianshang. Now that it was facing Jihuang Xinyuan, it couldn't help but be distracted. Jihuang Xinyuan's escape startled the Taishu Taoist and the Buddhist ancestor. But they were still shocked by the scene in front of them. Although he was unable to suppress two sane emperors of the demon race at the same time, Lin Feng was able to fight against two demon emperors without being at a disadvantage. This was already a magnificent feat that had never happened in the heaven primal world before. The same thought appeared in Jihuang Xinyuan and Juehuang Xianshang's minds. But before they could think about what to do next, Lin Feng suddenly laughed. He did not feel any regret that Jihuang Xinyuan had broken out of the encirclement, nor did he worry that he might face a pincer attack from two Saint Emperors. Lin Feng chuckled and formed a sword seal with his right hand again. But this time it was not the single Yuan Dao sword. Chapter 1472. Lin Feng was fighting the two demon emperors alone. While he was not at a disadvantage, it was difficult for him to suppress and seal them. Jihuang Xinyuan seized the chance when Lin Feng fought against Juehuang Xianshang and decisively jumped out of the Xintian layout. Outside the Xintian layout was the Taiji Heavenly Cycle Star Formation. As the sky filled with starlight, Jihuang Xinyuan bared his teeth and grinned. The blood-red sea of stars around him surged and collided with the Taiji Heavenly Cycle Star Formation. The enormous formation immediately slowed down slightly. The starry sky that seemed like a real universe was even dyed red. Affected by this, the Xintian layout seal weakened even more. Juehuang Xianshang also used this chance to charge out of the chessboard. Although they had successfully broken out of the encirclement, the two demon emperors did not feel relaxed. Putting aside the fact that Lord Taishu, the clear heaven mirror, and Gautama Buddha were all outside the Tai Chi Heavenly Cycle Stars formation, Lin Feng, who was in front of them, was something that they could not afford to underestimate. Lin Feng's index and second finger formed a sword. With a sword seal, a chaotic and brutal sword ray appeared at the tip of his finger. It was a terrifying presence that could destroy everything and destroy the world. It was even more brutal than the two demon emperors' divine abilities and demonic powers. The moment the sword ray appeared, the already restless spirit sea became even more frenzied. While Lin Feng and Yujing Mountain were in the chaotic space between the spirit sea and the other worlds, when Lin Feng's heaven-punishing sword chi appeared, the spirit sea still went berserk. Spirit energy and light surged out of the spirit sea like a tidal wave and rushed towards Lin Feng with the momentum to completely drown him. But as the waves in the spirit sea grew stronger, the water in the dead sea rose as well. It surged out of the crack and widened the crack. The brutal energy in the atmosphere was drawn by Lin Feng's sword and started to gather in the chaotic space. The thick, brutal energy gathered and formed invisible currents. Everywhere it passed, all living beings died and time and space collapsed. Even Mount Yujing, the profound heaven treasure tree, and the cyclic purple chi were trembling. At this moment, the heaven-punishing sword chi on Lin Feng's fingertip gradually turned from a chaotic color to a colorless and formless one. However, the terrifying aura of power within it became sharper and more oppressive. Wherever the edge of the sword pointed, everything would perish. The Taishu Taoist and Sakyamuni Tathagata looked at Lin Feng solemnly. They could vaguely sense that Lin Feng's heaven-punishing sword chi was actually somewhat similar to the energy aura of the Dead Sea, but it was also different. But there was no doubt that it was the Tao of collapse and obliteration. It was a terrifying force capable of obliterating the heavens and the earth, and when it was at its peak, even the universe would move towards destruction. It was a power that surpassed the Dharma-ending calamity and the collapse of the great Tao. It was a power that could truly end creation and return all Taos to nothingness. Seeing this scene, Taoist supremacy, and Taoist supremacy felt their scalps going numb. His ferocious aura is even stronger than before. If this continues, There's no need for the heaven annihilating sword. This person will bring destruction to the great thousand world by himself. Jue Huang Xianshang and Ji Huang Xinyuan, the two monster emperors who were facing him directly, were naturally more affected. Ji Huang Xinyuan's snow-white hair stood on end as he stared at Lin Feng with his blood-red eyes. His body suddenly rose and became indiscernible again. Jue Huang Xianshang's expression was also solemn. As the scales on his body opened and closed, a vast amount of monster energy surged. Rays of golden light shot into the sky and covered his entire body. At this moment, the four peak experts could clearly feel that Lin Feng was not just using the heaven-punishing sword qi. Rays of black light surged on his fingertip and instantly turned into countless black swords of light in the air. They surrounded a blood-red pillar of air that pierced through the sky. Billions of black swords of light quickly arranged themselves into formation patterns, and then together formed a huge sword formation. A shocking murderous aura filled the area, and it was a ghastly sight. As the heaven-punishing sword and Lin Feng's cultivation continued to increase, the power of the original heaven-punishing sword formation also increased rapidly. Lin Feng had not used this formation for many years. At this moment, he used it again, and it completely shook the universe. It fused with the invisible sword light on Lin Feng's fingertip. At this moment, the entire heaven-punishing sword formation changed again, and it rose to another level. The blood-red pillar of air and the billions of black swords of light gradually became invisible and colorless, but the brutal energy contained within them became even more terrifying. Looking at the heaven-punishing sword formation, Jue Huang Xuanshang and Ji Huang Xinyuan's expressions became solemn. Where the heaven-punishing sword formation appeared, even the endless starlight of the Tai Chi heavenly cycle stars formation seemed to dim a little, and its operation was even affected. The Supreme Imperial Palace and the six-star sea gates kept shaking in the formation. If the strength of their side was like this, then there was no need to say how the two monster emperors who were their enemies felt. But Lin Feng did not directly activate the heaven-punishing sword formation. Instead, he laughed and said, "Xuanli, come." Everyone present was shocked at this moment. Outside Yujing Mountain, where the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea intersected, the vortex grew larger and larger. The ultimate and fundamental power of life and death intertwined, and the power grew stronger and stronger, crushing everything and spirit chi that dared to approach it. But there was a sword light that grew brighter and brighter. When the sword light reached a peak, it suddenly disappeared. The unusually brutal sword will also disappeared at this moment, as if the heaven-punishing sword that had been sealed for the third time had disappeared without a trace. Had it failed? Of course not. In the heaven-punishing sword formation above Lin Feng's head, a cold and beautiful woman appeared, sitting cross-legged. It was Xuanli. Lin Feng's soft laughter and Xuanli's cold and metallic voice rang out at the same time. Punishing. Heavens! The next moment, Xuanli's figure disappeared from the sword formation, and Lin Feng's raised right hand seemed to hold an invisible and colorless longsword. There was not a drop of brutal and murderous aura flowing out of the longsword. It seemed completely different from before. But Lord Tai's face was slightly ashen, and he sighed without saying a word. At this moment, the power of the heaven-punishing sword had reached a new level. Its aura was gone, but it did not mean that it had lost its power. On the contrary, it no longer flowed out, and it became even more mysterious and powerful. It was just like the terrifying Dead Sea in front of them, which could destroy everything in the world and disintegrate all the Tao of heaven and earth. But normally, not to mention ordinary people, even if it was cultivators, how many of them could sense its existence? How many of them could personally experience its terror? How many of them could truly open up the ocean of death and cause the power to collapse, destroy the Tao, and destroy the world to descend into the mortal world? The heaven-punishing sword reappeared, but there was no reaction from the Supreme Imperial Palace and the Star Sea Gate in the Tai Chi Heavenly Cycle Star Formation. The treasures like Fengdu City and the Permitha Bridge in the Spirit Sea and the heaven-opening sword and the longevity lotus throne in the vast thousand domains also did not move. There were only two magic treasures that moved. The Bell of Creation next to Lin Feng, and the Haotian Mirror next to the Taishu Taoist. The Bell of Creation appeared next to Lin Feng, ringing continuously. The ringing of the bell was unprecedentedly urgent, and there was even a hint of mournfulness in it. As the bell rang, light and shadow shone brightly. Every time the bell rang, it was as if a world of creation was destroyed within it. When the next bell rang, another universe and the vast thousand domains would be created, and then as the bell rang, it would be destroyed. This cycle repeated. Countless Haotian mirrors appeared in the boundless space and time. The radiance on the mirrors flickered, repeating the same process. The countless light streams of the great path that were connected to the Haotian mirror actually broke apart at this moment. Countless mirrors vibrated in the air, creating a cacophony of noises. At this moment, everyone was staring at the invisible sword in Lin Feng's hand. They could feel the power that seemed invisible, but made people feel fear from the depths of their souls. There was no need for the sword to be drawn. Everyone had already realized it. The heaven-punishing sword before them was the undisputed #1 enchanted treasure of heaven origin. It had completely surpassed the Bell of Creation and the Haotian Mirror. The terrifying power within it made people feel as if it should not exist in the great heaven origin world. Even a vast thousand domains could not withstand it. At that moment, there was no sadness or joy on Lin Feng's face. He looked calmly at Juehuang Xianshang and Jihuang Xinyuan. Then he swung his sword. With a boom, the light of the entire vast thousand domains, whether it was the divine land or infinite wasteland, dimmed. The sky darkened, and the endless spirit chi seemed to have dried up. Layer after layer of foreign dimensions, and even medium thousand domains, were destroyed for no reason at all. When the sword fell, Juehuang Xianshang and the extreme Emperor's divine abyss, the two elites who stood at the peak of the heaven primal world, sighed. At that moment, they vaguely felt as if they were facing the final catastrophe of the world. Taishu Taoist and Sakyamuni Tathagata also sighed softly. Lord Tai's face was pale. He looked towards the crack that led to the vast thousand domains. At that moment, the vast thousand domains seemed to be heading towards their end. Fortunately, Lin Feng's sword was aimed at the two great demon emperors and not the vast thousand domains. Otherwise, Lord Tai did not dare to imagine the result. The seven seas of heaven origin were all shaken at that moment. The mysterious sea, sea of refuge, sea of space, underworld sea, and sea of stars did not stir up monstrous waves at that moment. Instead, they seemed to be frozen in place. The waves of light in the mysterious sea froze like statues at that moment. The vast mist in the sea of refuge also became stiff and stagnant. The storm in the sea of space subsided. It was unprecedentedly calm. The thousands of disasters in the sea of darkness all subsided, revealing a strangely peaceful scene. The endless starlight in the sea of stars stopped flashing. It looked like a picture of tranquility. And the spirit sea and dead sea that were right in front of them stirred up unprecedented waves. The dimensions of space twisted and tore violently. The tides of the spirit sea and the dead sea filled the chaotic void at the same time. Juehuang Xianshang and Jihuang Xinyuan roared at the same time. Then they stepped through the chaotic space and fled into the distance. Even they did not dare to test this sword with their own bodies. And as the sword light fell, an angry roar that shook the heavens resounded in the chaotic void. The vast thousand domains trembled. The heavens and the earth collapsed together. The power of the dimensions twisted and separated the entire world, resetting the world. At that moment, the great heaven origin world seemed to be replaying the scene of the end of the immemorial era, the beginning of the ancient era, the scene of the world splitting apart. Chapter 1473. When Lin Feng raised the sky-crushing sword, Even his own Tai Chi Heavenly Cycle Stars formation, Bell of Fortune, and Shintian layout had to retreat. This made the two demon emperors feel their bodies lighten as they were freed from their shackles. However, the pressure on their hearts grew heavier, because at this moment, they could clearly feel the threat of death. Even Juehuang Xuanshang and Jihuang Xinyuan, experts who stood at the peak of the great heaven primordial world, were powerless against Lin Feng's sword. At this time, they could only take the opportunity to rush out of the Shintian time, cave, and flee far away. As long as they could get away in an instant, they would still have a chance to live. But Lin Feng's sword had already descended, sweeping away everything in its path. This was a powerful force that had never appeared in the great heaven primordial world over the endless years. It caused the entire vast 1,000 domains to tremble, as if they could not withstand it. The target of this sword was Jihuang Xinyuan. Where the sword pointed, the blood-colored mist around the extreme emperor rolled away and dissipated. The stars that floated in the blood-red mist were all destroyed, dimming and shattering. The blood-red starry sea of the universe also welcomed its end at this moment. Time and space completely collapsed, shattering into nothingness and chaos. Jihuang Xinyuan leaped up and used extreme agility, but the distorted and swaying laws of time and space were cut down by Lin Feng's sword. It immediately became dull and could no longer be used, rendering all of the extreme emperor's previous actions useless, as if it had never happened. Waves of demonic power surged out like a raging tide, gushing out from the chaos. Jihuang Xinyuan's eyes were blood-red, and a true spirit divine tattoo appeared on his forehead. In the spirit abyss mountain range of the vast 1,000 domains, there was no need for the great sage or Zhu Yin to do anything. Demonic aura suddenly shot up from the entire spirit abyss mountain range, forming countless giant demon monkeys in the void. They roared at the sky, as if resonating with Jihuang Xinyuan, who was far away. However, as Lin Feng's sword slashed down, the demonic qi around Jihuang Xinyuan's body started to be obliterated, and Jihuang Xinyuan was slashed in the middle. Even if he was not as strong as Juehuang Xianshang, he was still one of the strongest in the world. His body, which seemed like a world of its own, was also split apart by Lin Feng's sword. A terrifying wound appeared on Jihuang Xinyuan's body from his left shoulder to the right side of his waist. The lower half of his body, along with his left arm, had completely disappeared. At the immortal realm, the Saint Emperor of the Sky, Origin Demon Clan, had stepped onto the Eternal Bridge. His true form was inseparable from the Great Thousand World. However, such a powerful body was severed by Lin Feng with a single slash. It was truly a terrifying sword that could destroy the heavens and destroy the Tao. It was like the final catastrophe of the universe. The lower half of the extreme King Divine Abyss's body was completely obliterated. The atmospheric world also shook violently at this moment. The heavens and the earth were torn apart, and the distorted boundaries were divided into two worlds. Whether it was infinite wasteland land or the divine land, both seemed to be torn apart at this moment, and were divided into four worlds. Under the shroud of the ferocious sword intent, the chaotic space-time around Jihuang Xinyuan completely froze. It was like a dead zone, like the Dead Sea that had been calm and silent in the beginning. Even Lin Feng's own Shintian time, light, grotto heaven had been pierced through, and a seemingly irreparable gap had appeared. The void between Lin Feng and Jihuang Xinyuan was chaotic and silent, as if it was in a state of void. This was the result of Mount Yujing, the Shintian treasure tree, the cyclic purple qi, and Lin Feng himself. Otherwise, the moment Lin Feng raised his sword, the Shintian time light grotto heaven would have been the first to collapse. Lin Feng took a step forward and was already next to Jihuang Xinyuan. This great demon only had half a body left, but his life force was really tenacious. Even though he was so heavily injured, he still had a breath left. Even in such a heavily injured state, Ji Huang Xinyuan was still one of the top experts in the heaven primordial world. However, against Lin Feng, he could only wait for death. Lin Feng held the sword in his right hand and smiled as he raised his left palm. Under the furious gaze of Ji Huang Xinyuan, he slapped down with his palm, and a mysterious Tao fruit appeared in his palm. The bell of creation reappeared above his head, and it rang continuously. Streams of dermic power were added to his palm. Ji Huang Xinyuan's violent roar sounded once more, but it stopped abruptly halfway. The Saint Emperor of the demon race, divine Abyss Lingji, who had once ruled the heaven primordial world, turned the infinite wasteland upside down and brought countless catastrophes to the divine land, had his head smashed by Lin Feng's palm. Ji Huang Xinyuan, who had returned to the vast thousand worlds from the endless unknown and mysterious Dead Sea, died again not long after he came out of the Dead Sea. He was not besieged by many experts, and no one died with him. Instead, Ji Huang Xinyuan was defeated and killed by a single person. It was clean and neat, without any suspense. The person who killed him was the master of the celestial sect, Lin Feng. Seeing this, Shoichi Dashin, Lord Xian, and the others felt as if they were in a dream. Lord Tai's mind shook violently, and even the Taishu Taoist and Gautama were slightly absent-minded. This was something that had never happened in the history of the heaven primordial world. At the same time that he killed Ji Huang Xinyuan, Lin Feng even fought 1 against 2, and at the same time, Jue Huang Xuanshang had no choice but to flee. Among the 3 strongest saint emperors in the history of the heaven primordial world, other than Yuang Heavenly Ocean, Jue Huang Xuanshang and Ji Huang Xinyuan, the 2 great demon emperors, were no match for Lin Feng. Such a feat was something that even the Taishu Taoist and Gautama could not remain indifferent when they saw it. After witnessing Lin Feng's sword strike, everyone present had a vague feeling that Lin Feng, who had the Heaven Punishing Sword, the Tai Chi Heavenly Cycle Star Formation, the Heaven Punishing Sword Formation, the Bell of Fate, and the Xianyan Bureau, was not a match for him even if the 4 top experts, Jue Huang Xuanshang, Ji Huang Xinyuan, the Taishu Taoist, and Gautama teamed up. Such divine abilities and magic power were unparalleled in the world. This was no longer invincibility in a one-on-one battle. This was invincibility that could sweep through the world and look down on all others. And Ji Huang Xinyuan became the first expert to fall under Lin Feng's unparalleled stance, demonstrating Lin Feng's invincibility to the world. After killing Ji Huang Xinyuan, Lin Feng looked at the fleeing Jue Huang Xuanshang and smiled. He tossed the invisible sword in his hand, and it floated high in the boundless chaos. Xian Li's figure reappeared, sitting cross-legged in the void of chaos. The heaven-punishing sword was placed horizontally on her knees. At this moment, she seemed to be floating high in space. Her cold gaze pierced through the void and landed on the Xian Sea that Jue Huang had fled to. Just her gaze alone caused waves to surge in the Xian Sea. Even Jue Huang Xuanshang could not completely calm it down. Lin Feng did not continue to attack. The other human cultivators all sighed in relief. They could feel that if Lin Feng had continued to use the terrifying heaven-punishing sword, the great heaven primordial world might have truly been destroyed. Roars came from the Xian Sea. Jue Huang Xuanshang's gaze pierced through the void and met Lin Feng's gaze. His gaze was filled with anger and humiliation. The ancestor of the dragon race, one of the first living beings of the great heaven primordial world, one of the strongest, had followed in the footsteps of his descendant, the Yuan Dragon King. How could he not be angry? He now understood why Lin Feng had killed Ji Huang Xinyuan and not him. It was not because he was stronger, but because Ji Huang Xinyuan's escape technique was too powerful. If he had escaped, it would have been difficult to find the Extreme Emperor, even if the heaven-punishing sword hung high in the sky. But it was much easier to find the Extreme Emperor. Even if Jue Huang Xuanshang abandoned the Xian Sea and traveled the void of the universe, it would still be easier than finding the Extreme Emperor. But it was precisely because of this that Jue Huang Xuanshang felt even more sullen. Strictly speaking, Juehuang Xuanshang had once ruled the entire great heaven primordial world and was the sole ruler of the primordial epoch. Not only was he the holy emperor of the Yao race, but he was also infinitely close to being the ruler of all the heavens and the ruler of all races. But now he was trapped in the Xian Sea by Xianli. This made him feel even more humiliated and angry than when he had been destroyed in the primordial epoch. The demon emperor of the dragon clan roared nonstop in the mystic sea, sweeping up the power of the mystic sea, wanting to rush out of the mystic sea and fight Lin Feng again. Lin Feng pointed with a finger. The Tai Chi heavenly cycle stars formation fused with the Xian Tian layout, gathering endless starlight and compressing it in the void. In the end, it turned into a ray of light that fell towards the Xian Sea. The bell of creation chimed, turning into a river of time that merged with the ray of light. Then, they rushed out of the void and surrounded the Xian Sea. A vast power immediately blocked Juehuang Xuanshang and the power of the Xian Sea. Dragon roars rang out continuously. Lin Feng pointed again, and the heaven punishment sword formation also descended, blocking the entrance to the Xian Sea. Waves of vicious sword intent and sword chi surged towards the Xian Sea, fusing with the Tai Chi heavenly cycle stars formation, Xian Tian layout, and bell of creation, making it difficult for Juehuang to rush out of the Xian Sea. Xianli watched all of this coldly. Lin Feng waved at her, then looked at the Xian Sea with a smile. Fellow Taoist Xianshang, don't be anxious. It wasn't easy for you to return. Rest in the Xian Sea for a few days. Someone will come to find you in the future. With that, Lin Feng turned to look at the Taishu Taoist and Gautama Buddha. He smiled. If you two want to enter the Xian Sea, I naturally won't stop you. However, I won't interfere in your battle either. The Taishu Taoist smiled faintly and didn't say anything. If Juehuang Xuanshang stayed in the Xian Sea, he could fight against him, the Hao Yian Mirror, and Gautama Buddha. If they couldn't kill him completely, it would be no different from being trapped in the Xian Sea by Lin Feng. The Taishu Taoist and Gautama Buddha's gazes fell on Xianli, who was sitting in the chaos. Fortunately, their target was Jihuang Xinyuan. Fortunately, they were in the chaos, and the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea were entangled. Lin Feng smiled. As for me, I didn't hold back just now. Now, I have to deal with the aftermath. I made a fool of myself. With that, he put his palms together, and a Dao fruit appeared. Then, he performed the yin and yang return to origin wondrous realm, which landed on the world of the vast thousand domains. The vast lands of infinite wasteland and the vast lands of the divine prefecture shook at the same time. The destruction caused by the killing of the extreme emperor's divine abyss and the brand new crack in the sky that seemed to be splitting the universe into 4 parts gradually stabilized and began to heal. Chapter 1474. Seeing Lin Feng using the yin and yang returning magical realm, the Taoist master and the others all sighed softly, splitting the universe with one sword and mending the sky with one hand. Such a magical power was enough to make people gasp in amazement. The Taishu Taoist watched this scene calmly. He gently tapped the Hao Yian mirror with his finger. The mysterious mirror light scattered and fell into the vast thousand worlds. Under the mirror light, the huge crack that had split open began to heal at a faster rate. The Gautama Buddha put his palms together. Boundless light filled the world and turned into drops of rain that fell on the world. If it had completely split open like in the last years of the ancient times, it might have taken more effort. But at this moment, the crack was still unstable. It was suppressed by the magical power of Lin Feng, the Taishu Taoist, and the Gautama Buddha. Time seemed to flow backward and the crack closed again. However, at this moment, the world was still in chaos. An illusory door opened in the sky, and behind the door, the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea were 2 different worlds. The tides rose and fell, and it was a ghastly sight. Lin Feng smiled. His original body sat still on Yujing Mountain. In the spiritual sea, his Brontosaurus clone, the god of war clone, and the Nine-Chi clone were still sitting on the primeval golden lamp, quietly under the bulwark umbrella. As the battle seemed to have finally come to an end and the sky-crushing sword hung high in the sky, the tides in the Dead Sea and the spiritual sea seemed to have finally calmed down. But whether it was Lin Feng himself, or the Taishu Taoist and the others, they could vaguely feel that there were different wills coming from the spiritual sea and the Dead Sea. The spiritual sea was afraid of the Aberdeen. The Dead Sea was much more complicated and thought-provoking. Although the wills were different, the object of their attention was the sky-crushing sword hanging high above the chaos. The Taishu Taoist and the Gautama Buddha turned to look at the Dead Sea and saw that the crack in the Dead Sea was gradually closing. Ji Huang Xunyuan, who had just perished, might return after countless years. 4,000 years ago, Yuang's celestial sea had been one of the three strongest great demons in the history of the Heaven's origin realm, along with Extreme Emperor and Extreme Emperor. If there was no one to suppress it in the Dead Sea, it would definitely return earlier than the Extreme Emperor's divine abyss. However, after witnessing Lin Feng's sword earlier, even if the Yu Huang Heaven Sea returned, the Great Thousand World would no longer be the same as when he ruled the world back then. At this moment, after the storm in the spiritual sea had calmed down, the water in the giant golden lake began to decrease. Rays of light extended between the veins and gathered on the primordial golden lamp. Streams of light of the great path pulsed ceaselessly in the spiritual sea, shuttling back and forth in the void. Endless spiritual chi filled the surroundings. Looking at this scene, everyone was silent. After the series of drastic changes just now, Lin Feng was actually able to restart the process of refining the spiritual sea. Tai Dao Master, Shoichi Dashin, and Xian Dao Master looked at each other and shook their heads. None of them spoke. Lin Feng had used the most mysterious and terrifying Dead Sea of the seven seas of Heaven's origin realm to stabilize the spiritual sea. The two forces collided and balanced so that the spiritual sea would not be closed again because of the battle just now. Now, Lin Feng was even able to continue the process of refining the spiritual sea. This was part of the plan of the Taishu Temple. However, in their expectation, the best result was that their patriarch could refine the spiritual sea after he returned. What Lin Feng was doing now clearly showed that he had the same idea before, which was why things are going so smoothly now. This made Tai Dao Master and the others speechless. Without opening the path to the Dead Sea, Lin Feng and the Celestial Master Xianmen were the most likely people to refine and control the Spirit Sea. And after successfully opening the path to the Dead Sea, after a series of drastic changes, Lord Taishu, Gautama Buddha, Jue Huang Xuanshang, and the Extreme Emperor's divine abyss all returned. But the final result was still the same. The spiritual sea still belonged to Xianmen Tianzong. Although Lin Feng had sent the Bell of Creation, the Heavenly Punishment Sword Formation, the Tai Chi Heavenly Cycle Stars Formation, and the Xiantian Bureau to the vast thousand domains to seal Jue Huang in the mysterious sea, as long as he and Xianli were still here, no one could stop them from refining the spiritual sea. Even if the Taishu Taoist and Gautama Buddha worked together with the Haotian Mirror, it would not help. Ji Huang Xinyuan and Jue Huang Xuanshang had used their lives to prove this point. At this time, Tai Dao Master, Shoichi Dashin, and Xian Yi were even smiling bitterly in their hearts. Opening the Dead Sea still could not change the result of Lin Feng refining the spiritual sea. What's more, it had helped Lin Feng successfully seal the Heavenly Punishment Sword for the third time, allowing the Peerless Sword to reach a higher level, surpassing all the experts in the history of the great Heaven Primal World. Its ferocity was invincible and invincible. After repairing the broken realm gap, Lin Feng did not return to the spiritual sea. Silently, he sat on the peak of Yujing Mountain, floating in the chaotic space beyond the heavens, a smile on his face. His gaze fell into the world of the spiritual sea, sweeping across it and locking onto two figures. The two figures were engaged in a battle to the death, causing monstrous waves in the spiritual sea. It was the battle between Lin Feng's own disciple, Yu Hongyan, and the heavenly wolf great saint. In the end, in a bloody battle, Yu Hongyan succeeded in killing the heavenly wolf great saint, but he used the miraculous Sala tree to block the heavenly wolf great saint's dying counterattack. His crimson hair fluttered in the world of the spiritual sea, as dazzling as flames. On the other side, Zhu Yi, who had successfully resolved the threat of the Yuluo divine light, had also defeated the current temple master of the Taishu temple, Lin Daoan. Although it was not a battle to the death, it was still an earth-shattering battle. However, it was another battle that caused the spiritual sea to be almost turned upside down. After a wild tide that shook the vast thousand worlds and almost caused the unstable spiritual sea realm to be torn apart, the battle finally calmed down. In the chaos outside the spiritual sea, Gautama Buddha stretched out his palm, and an exquisite saha flower bloomed in his palm, then withered. Gautama Buddha glanced at Lin Feng, but Lin Feng's expression did not change. He sat on Jade Capital Mountain, vaguely standing between the Buddha and the spiritual sea. The withered saha flower turned into ashes and was blown away by the wind. Gautama Buddha shook his head without saying a word and closed his eyes. At that moment, a stream of light jumped out of the spiritual sea and landed in the chaos. The stream of light stopped, and the figure of the monkey appeared. His demonic aura was a little weak, but his eyes were bright as he scanned the void. Lin Feng smiled and said, "The extreme emperor is back, but he was sent away by me." Hearing that, the monkey bared his teeth and said, forget it. Master of the Celestial Gate, your magical powers are really amazing. I can't stop you from refining the spiritual sea. If you don't make things difficult for me, I'll leave now." This time, I didn't come to the spiritual sea in vain. After saying that, he looked up to the sky and laughed. He swung the divine iron rod in his hand, and a shocking murderous aura seeped out of the iron rod. This iron rod had just killed a great demon in the Dharma-ending realm. The Dharma-ending tribulation could not be activated in the spiritual sea, and Golden Cicada could not escape through some of the means he had set up in advance. Golden Cicada wanted to escape from the spiritual sea through the realm crack, but the monkey was smart enough to use this trick. Golden Cicada's escape technique was not as good as the monkey's, so he was blocked by the monkey. Golden Cicada, who was proficient in the Buddhist Dharma and understood karma, could predict that his trip into the spiritual sea would be a great omen, but there was a chance that he could turn misfortune into fortune. However, when he saw Lin Feng sweep away the heroes in the spiritual sea, he knew that his opportunity to turn misfortune into fortune had probably gone up in smoke. Golden Cicada could only feel helpless about this. Even the Buddha could not predict anything related to Lin Feng. At that moment, his fate was almost decided. This great demon expert, who had obtained the Tao since ancient times, had traveled the world for many years, but in the end, he had fallen in the sea of the Great Path. He had said that the world was impermanent. Those who also felt that the world was impermanent were the primordial demonic apes in the spiritual abyss mountain range of the vast thousand worlds. Kneeling on the ground, great sage Lingji was dumbfounded. His blue eyes had completely lost their luster, and his whole body was like a clay puppet. Her usually spirited blue eyes were now like extinguished lamps. He was a great demon who had achieved the realm of star-soul fusion. He had lived in this world for thousands of years. After the fall of the Jihuang Xinyuan clan, the supreme spiritual monkey clan was seriously injured when Yuang Tianhai ascended to the throne. After that, the supreme spiritual monkey clan regained the leadership of the primordial demonic ape clan, and the supreme spiritual monkey clan was in a rather mysterious and awkward situation. Great Sage Lingji had grown up in such an environment since he was a child. After so many years of experience, even if he could not be said to be absolutely calm in the face of any changes, there were very few things that could truly shake his mental state. This was the first time in his life that he had seen such a dazed expression. But this time, he couldn't recover from it for a long time. His ancestor, the supreme expert of his clan, had actually returned to the vast thousand worlds. Not only the supreme spiritual monkey clan, but the entire primordial demonic ape clan also had hope of returning to their former peak. But just as this hope appeared, it was instantly destroyed. It was like an illusion, causing great sage Lingji to feel that the entire world before him had become unreal at this moment. If great sage Lingji was like this, the group of monkeys behind him were even more at a loss. All of them were dumbfounded as they sensed that the aura of Jihuang Xunyuan had been destroyed by someone else in this world. Let alone great sage Lingji, great sage Yucheng, and the others. Even the great sage and great sage Zhuyin, who were in the Dharma-ending realm, were dumbfounded. At this moment, the great sage was not at all happy that he could continue to be the leader of the demonic ape clan. What he felt was only shock and even fear. That was Jihuang Xunyuan, one of the 3 strongest demon emperors in the history of the Great Tianyuan world, an existence that once suppressed the entire Great Tianyuan world. What kind of power could send the extreme emperor into destruction again so decisively and neatly? This was completely beyond the knowledge and imagination of the great sage Zhuyin, and the others. After all, the great sage and great sage Zhuyin were great demon experts in the Dharma-ending realm. When they felt the evil aura of heaven and earth gathering and the terrifying change that seemed to destroy the vast thousand worlds along with the extreme emperor, a figure emerged in their minds. It was a figure that they had never directly faced, but had long been engraved in their hearts. A purple-clothed young man, slashed down with his sword. At this moment, the scene seemed to be engraved into their souls, sending chills all over their bodies. Chapter 1475. Although the great sage and great sage Zhuyin had never personally experienced it, they could vaguely recognize that it came from the power of Lin Feng's heaven-punishing sword. However, in their past knowledge, although the heaven-punishing sword was terrifying, it had never reached such an unimaginable and indescribable level. It had never reached a level where it could surpass Jihuang Xunyuan. However, the sword that surpassed everyone's knowledge in the great heaven primordial world proved this point. Thinking back to how Lin Feng had sealed the heaven-punishing sword a second time after ascending Mount Shu, the great sage and great sage Zhuyin felt bitter in their hearts, but there was nothing they could do about it. The future of the primordial demon ape clan of the Spirit Abyss Mountain had become an urgent problem that the great sage and great sage Zhuyin had to consider. Jihuang Xunyuan had perished once again, and Xianmin Tianzong was likely to be the biggest winner in the battle of the Spirit Sea. The great sage and great sage Zhuyin had both been heavily injured by Shi Tianhao and the others when they had stepped onto the Divine Land. At that moment, the primordial demon ape clan was truly in a precarious situation. Compared to the primordial demon ape clan, the Yudu clan that had retreated to the Blackboard world had heavy hearts. Although they had been forced to retreat from the Spirit Sea, the Yudu clan still paid close attention to the changes in the Spirit Sea and the changes in the Boundless World. Juehuang Xianshang and Jihuang Xunyuan had returned to the Boundless World together, but there was no sign of Yuwang Celestial Sea. This made the Yudu clan's hearts sink. Strictly speaking, the Yudu clan's relationship with the Dragon clan and the primordial demon ape clan wasn't very harmonious. In particular, their relationship with the primordial demon ape clan was especially bad. The rise of a new emperor would definitely be stepping on the bones of the old emperor to ascend to his throne. After the fall of Jihuang Xunyuan in the Middle Epoch, Yuwang Tianhai led the Yudu race to ascend to the peak of Tianwang Vast Land. On their path to the top, there were many corpses of demon experts, especially those of the primordial demonic ape race. Before the Battle of the Spirit Sea, although the Dragon race occupied the Xianhai Sea, the Yudu race was still the strongest race in Tianhuang Vast Land. But as Juehuang Xianshang and Jihuang Xunyuan returned together, the situation instantly changed. Even with the external pressure brought by Lin Feng and the rest of the strong practitioners of the human race, Yudu race's situation would become much worse than before. They would definitely have to face the expedition of the two great demon emperors of the dragon race and the ape race. They would either submit or suffer heavy losses or even be wiped out. If the spirit ocean fell into the hands of either the extreme king or the extreme king, the situation would be dire. But just as they were thinking about it, the sudden change made the strong practitioners of Yudu that were led by Yudu Mirage Sun were also dumbfounded. Ji Huang Xinyuan, who had always been known as the supreme emperor of their race, Yuang Tianhai, had actually fallen. Just as they returned to the boundless world, Ji Huang Xinyuan was sent back to destruction. Such a sudden change made Yudu and the rest dumbfounded. Although the possibility was small, if they said that Ji Huang Xinyuan had died because he was surrounded by many strong practitioners, including Jua Huang Xianshang, it would be easier for them to accept it. But that terrifying sword that could destroy the earth already showed who killed Ji Huang Xinyuan. Yudu and the other strong practitioners of Yudu were all too familiar with that ruthless sword will. In the war between the two worlds, they had returned to the boundless world and were about to perform the return of the king, but they had met a wall when they faced that person. The strong practitioner of Yudu in the Dharma-ending realm, Kan Yuan Yudu, had been killed on the spot. If it wasn't for the broken horn left by Yu Huang Tianhai and Yudu Royal City of Blackboard World, even Yudu Mirage Sun and Yudu might not have been able to escape. Lin Feng and his heaven-punishing sword had left a deep impression on the Yudu race. It didn't lose to Taishu Temple and Hao Ian Mirror at all. And now, Yudu and the rest could clearly feel that the terrifying sword was even stronger and more ruthless than before. It was as if the end of the world had truly arrived. Facing such a strong power, Ji Huang Xinyuan's defeat was not undeserved. But this power came from Lin Feng and the heaven-punishing sword. This made the Yudu race feel incomparably bitter. It was a kind of bitterness and even a slight despair. Even if Yuang Tianhai could return to the boundless world like Jue Huang Xuanshang and Ji Huang Xinyuan, or if Yudu Mirage Sun and Yudu continued to improve and could finally reach the power of his brother, Tianhai Yudu, they would still face the same predicament when facing Lin Feng and the heaven-punishing sword. No matter how firm Yudu Mirage Sun's willpower was, no matter how grand his wish was, no matter how confident he was in himself, he couldn't help but waver in that instant. Great demons like Yudu Mirage Sun and Yudu who were in the middle calamity stage were shaken to such an extent, let alone the demons with lower cultivation. Many strong practitioners of the demon race felt a shadow in their hearts, and they couldn't pull themselves out of it. Endless wasteland was filled with misery, and the atmosphere in the divine land was a little strange and complicated. Jue Huang Xuanshang and Ji Huang Xinyuan had returned to the boundless world together. At first, it naturally brought a dark haze to the cultivation world of the human race. Under the influence of the past, many people felt despair. The sudden change in the situation naturally exceeded many people's expectations. Although they hoped that Lin Feng and the other top practitioners of the human race could fight against the two great demon emperors, when Ji Huang Xinyuan was killed by Lin Feng's sword, everyone was stunned and couldn't come back to their senses. When they came back to their senses, they saw the figure of the blue-eyed white monkey that seemed to cover the sky completely perish. Everyone was wild with joy. The master of the profound gate, Lin Feng. At that moment, the grandeur of his prestige surpassed all existences in the past and present. However, after the initial ecstasy, the strong practitioners of the human race gradually calmed down. Gradually, other emotions rose in their hearts. They had mixed feelings, and for a moment they were all silent. Lin Feng's sword that seemed to be able to destroy the creation of the boundless world was simply too strong and too shocking. It made it hard for everyone to have the will to resist. After killing the extreme emperor, Lin Feng still seemed to have the strength to repair the sky. Before that, it was clear that he had a card up his sleeve. He could control it as he pleased, and it wasn't a one-time burst of power. This completely destroyed the last hope of the others. Although there were human emperors in both the primeval and ancient epochs who ruled over the masses with their words, there had never been anyone like Lin Feng who could truly subdue the heavens. At that moment, no matter how they felt about Xianmin Tianzong and Lin Feng, everyone had to admit that Lin Feng at that moment was the supreme being of the heavens. Perhaps there would be people who had the courage to resist him, but that included those who resisted him. It was difficult for them to hope that they would succeed. Xi and Longsheng and Sword Venerable Celestial Dipper looked at each other in silence. After a long time, Xi and Longsheng slowly said, "I will still go to Kunlun Mountain to fulfill the Tao in my heart." Sword Venerable Celestial Dipper nodded silently. He didn't say anything. His consciousness calmly passed through the void. "Let's go together." The ancient Emperor Gu Jun stood not far away from them. His expression was calm, without joy or sorrow. Silently, he looked at the light of the great Tao passing through the void. In the divine land, the capital of the great Qin dynasty, Xiling City. Within the imperial city, the current Qin Emperor Shi Zongtong sat on the dragon throne in the main hall. Below him sat monarch Jinyang, Shi Zongmao, and the others. The cultivators of the great Qin dynasty were all silent. After a long while, Shi Zongmao sighed softly. From now on, will the celestial sect of wonders become even more aloof and uninvolved with the secular world, or will they embark on the path of ruling the heavens and ruling the world? At that moment, unless there was another unexpected change, there was really nothing that could stop Lin Feng from doing anything. Slowly, the Qin Emperor Shi Zongtong said, "No matter which it is, it won't affect our next course of action." As soon as he said this, the cultivators of the great Qin present all sighed and nodded silently. However, their expressions also became slightly more relaxed. Shi Zongtong said, "After the matter of the spirit ocean is over, ask Heavenly Emperor Huang for his opinion. Whether he is willing or not, the great Qin must first show our attitude." Shi Zongmao glanced at Shi Zongtong. Since Shi Zongtong could so calmly state his decision, it could be seen that he had really made up his mind. Everything was for the overall benefit of the great Qin. Shi Zongtong's mood was probably far from as calm as he looked on the surface. It was extremely complicated. However, after constantly weighing the pros and cons, he finally calmly made a decision and calmly faced it. Shi Zongmao and the other cultivators of the great Qin sighed again. Everyone looked up at the top of the hall. Their gazes passed through the roof and looked at the vast sky. In the Tianjing city of the great Zhou dynasty, the current Emperor Liang Qian, King of Yin Liang Fu, King of Donghai Liang Jinglai, and the others sat in the royal palace. The emperors and ministers of the great Zhou were also silent. Liang Fu, Liang Jinglai, Liang Jingcheng, and the others all looked up at Liang Qian. Liang Qian's eyes were calm. After a while, he said unhurriedly, "After the matter of the spirit ocean is over, I want to go to Kunlun Mountain. King of Yanliang Royal Uncle will stay in Tianjing. King of Donghai and King of Yuan Royal Uncle will go with me." Liang Fu and the others did not say much. They all stood up and bowed to Liang Qian. "As you wish." Not only the ancient dynasty, the Mount Shu sword sect, the great Qin dynasty, and the great Zhou dynasty, but the other human forces in the divine land were also in a slight commotion. They all had their own ideas. The person with the most complicated feelings was none other than the person in the Taishu Temple on White Cloud Mountain. On the top of White Cloud Mountain, Kuang Heng and the others sat in a circle, all silent. When Ji Huang, Shun Yuan died under the terrifying sword, Kuang Heng and the others were all silent. Facing that sword, even though the Hao Ian mirror had recovered to its full state, it still seemed pale. They had succeeded in opening the passage to the Dead Sea according to plan and welcomed the patriarch Taishu Taoist back to the mortal world, but it was also in vain. Tao Master Yuan's face was as dark as water. He said in a low voice, "That extremely vicious sword has finally come to this step. Kuang Heng, Dao, Master Qing Ning, and the others were all silent. The huge white cloud mountain was slowly shrouded by clouds once more. Only indistinct sighs could be heard echoing in the mountain. Chapter 1476. Soon, another piece of news spread throughout the vast thousand domains. Juehuang Xianshang was forced to retreat to the Xian Sea and was trapped within, unable to leave. The great world of heaven was shaken once again. Not only was Ji Huang Xinyuan killed, but even Juehuang Xianshang was defeated and trapped within the Xian Sea, unable to leave. Lin Feng's killing of Ji Huang Xinyuan was clean and tidy, and Juehuang Xianshang's defeat further showed Lin Feng's strength. He had not killed the extreme emperor by chance, but his strength was indisputable. In the vast thousand domains, everyone's attention was focused on the distant void, trying to understand the situation in the Spirit Sea. Did Lin Feng's strong performance mean that the Spirit Sea was already in his hands? At this moment, in the Spirit Sea, Lin Feng's 3 doppelgangers sat on the primordial golden lamp, the light of the great path almost enveloping their bodies. And the golden lake beneath them was gradually drying up. The previously turbulent spiritual sea seemed to have regained its tranquility at this moment. As the spiritual chi surged, even the light of the great path shuttling through heaven and earth gradually disappeared. Only in the area near Lin Feng's 3 clones, ribbons of light appeared, connecting to Lin Feng's body. Yang Qing and White Tiger Great Sage stood silently beside Lin Feng. Then they saw a long rainbow streak across the sky, turning into a golden bridge that landed in front of them. On the bridge, Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan stood side by side. When Yang Qing saw them, she smiled and said, "Second senior brother, 4th senior sister, congratulations on returning victorious." Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan both smiled and said, "We made you wait here." Yang Qing shook her head and smiled. "Not at all. I also learned a lot from watching you fight." As he spoke, he looked in another direction. There, a white cloud streaked across the sky and cast itself out of the Spirit Sea. It was Lin Daohan, the current Abbey Dean of the Taishu Temple. In this generation of Taishu Temple, and even the history of the entire sect, several outstanding figures were defeated by Zhu Yi. However, his expression was calm as he passed through the Spirit Sea realm rift and entered the void outside the realm. Although the gap in the Dead Sea had healed, Lin Feng, the Taishu Taoist, and Gautama Buddha had temporarily blocked the passage to the spiritual sea, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Lin Daohan exited the Spirit Sea and came to the side of the Supreme One. He first bowed to the Taishu Taoist. The Taishu Taoist's eyes were as calm as water. His attitude was easygoing as he smiled and nodded without saying a word. After bowing to the Taishu Taoist, Lin Daohan straightened his body and bowed to the Supreme One and the others. He shook his head slightly and said, "Disciple is not as skilled as others." Slowly, the Supreme One said, "Do your best and put an end to the past. This is enough." Dao Master Xian nodded, while Shoichi Dashin sighed again. In the Spirit Sea, watching Lin Daohan's back as he left, Zhu Yi didn't say anything. Yang Qing sighed and said, "He's also an outstanding talent of his generation." At this moment, Lin Feng's voice suddenly rang in his ears. "Little Qing, the opportunity is coming." Yang Qing's body trembled. Then, together with Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan, they turned their heads to look in another direction. There, the void was torn open, and Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao appeared in front of them, hand in hand. Seeing Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao, Zhu Yi, Yu Hongyan, and Yang Qing all smiled. Zhu Yi glanced at Wang Lin and said with a smile, "Third junior brother, congratulations." The Permitha bridge under his feet slightly trembled. A gentle smile also appeared on Wang Lin's face. A shadow flashed above his head, and the Fengdu city that seemed to exist eternally in the cycle of reincarnation and time and space flashed. Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing's eyes lit up and they said in unison, "Third senior brother, congratulations." Wang Lin nodded to them, and then his gaze fell on Yang Qing. He said softly, "Fifth junior brother, I can try in the spiritual sea." Yang Qing took a deep breath and tried his best to calm his emotions. Let's wait for Master to finish refining the spiritual sea. Outside the spiritual sea, Lin Feng smiled and said, "It's okay." Yang Qing nodded slowly and heavily. Then he opened his palm, and a tiny grain of sand appeared in the center of his palm. Then it flew up and landed in front of Wang Lin. Wang Lin solemnly extended his finger and tapped it lightly. The grain of sand flashed slightly in the void and instantly disappeared. And above Wang Lin's head, layers of light and shadow flowed, and Fengdu City completely appeared. The grain of sand reappeared, landing on the Yellow Springs Road's Biliang slope that led to the gates of hell in Fengdu City. And then there seemed to be an invisible breeze blowing past, blowing the grain of sand towards Fengdu City. It crossed the Yellow Springs Road and entered Fengdu City. It ascended the bridge of helplessness, crossed the river of forgetfulness, and finally arrived at Emperor Yan's hall. The doors of Emperor Yan's hall opened, and two wheels of light, one black and one white, spun rapidly. Silently, the stone of 3 lives stood there. At this moment, a shadow was reflected in the stone of 3 lives, and it was constantly swaying. It looked like a slightly smaller Fengdu City, and also like a huge wheel slowly spinning. As the wheel spun, it was slow and looked extremely heavy. Outside the spiritual sea, Gautama Buddha, who had his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze fell on the spiritual sea, looking at Fengdu City above Wang Lin's head. He ignored everyone, including the stone of 3 lives. His gaze fell directly on the wheel that was slowly spinning inside the stone of 3 lives. After taking a look, Gautama Buddha nodded slightly. The wheel of destiny? After saying this, he closed his eyes again and sat in a lotus position in the chaos, as though he had died. Wang Lin seemed to feel Gautama Buddha's gaze and turned back to look, but he did not say anything. His figure disappeared before Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, Yu Hongyan, Yang Qing, and the others. When he reappeared, he was already sitting on the throne in Fengdu City's Emperor Yan's hall. Wang Lin formed a seal with one hand, and the finger of his other hand reached out, passing through the stone of 3 lives. He gently tapped the light shadow that looked like a city and a wheel. The wheel spun, and in an instant, it suddenly changed direction and began to reverse. Wang Lin's 6 arts of the Yellow Springs was the 6th and final art after the road to the Yellow Springs, River of Forgetfulness, Bridge of Helplessness, Emperor Yan's Hall, and the Stone of 3 Lives. Reversing Fate Wheel. This art, along with the road to the Yellow Springs and other immortality arts, was also refined into Fengdu City by Wang Lin. The entire Fengdu City shook at this moment, and then the spirit sea that had gradually calmed down suddenly lit up with the light of the great Tao. Thousands of streams of light merged together at this moment, turning into an extremely majestic and dazzling light belt that stretched across the sky and earth. The stream of light was different from usual, showing an obvious color, which was as black as ink. In this black stream of light, one could vaguely see light shadows floating within, turning into the image of life. And when these lives appeared, they instantly withered and died, leaving only white bones and desolation on the ground. But this scene did not give one a gloomy and terrifying feeling, but instead felt that it should be so. There was a sense of peace in one's heart, as though one was looking at the home that all life should belong to, eternal peace. On the other side, thousands of streams of light strangely merged, also turning into a majestic belt of light. It was the opposite of the black belt of light, revealing an obvious milky white color. In that belt of light, there were also layers of light shadows constantly appearing, but everything was full of vitality, recovering and growing, and new life was constantly being born. 2 thick belts of light, one black and one white, were like 2 giant swimming dragons, constantly twisting and fluctuating between heaven and earth. They separated and gathered above Wang Lin's Fengdu City together. With Fengdu City as the central hub, the black and white belts of light circled within the spirit sea. Everyone looked carefully and saw that the two belts of light had surged into Fengdu City, and then all fell into Emperor Yan's hall, and finally gathered in the light shadow within the Stone of Three Lives. At this moment, the rotating speed of the wheel of light and shadow began to accelerate. The grain of sand floated in the void, and then threw itself towards the light shadow. The grain of sand entered the light shadow, and the speed of the wheel of light and shadow's reversal instantly slowed down. Yang Qing's heart tightened slightly, and she turned to look at Wang Lin. Wang Lin looked at Yang Qing. He had not seen Yang Qing in such a fragile state for many years. At this moment, even Wang Lin was a little dazed, as though he had returned to the distant past. At that time, Yang Qing had just entered the sect and become his junior brother. Although she had just experienced the pain of the destruction of the Cloudy Cave, she was still shy and gentle. Lin Feng's 3 doppelgangers on the primordial golden lamp did not move, and they still sat motionless. Outside the spirit sea, in the chaotic space, his real body smiled slightly, and his finger gently pointed out. Beams of light surged, and the Taiji 1 yuan treasure light descended, entering the spirit sea through the realm gap. Lin Feng's Taiji 1 yuan treasure light spread out above Fengdu City. Beams of light crisscrossed and then spread out. It was like a haze of light, shrouding Fengdu City and the black and white great Tao of life and death. The haze of light was hazy and looked ethereal and illusory. But after being shrouded by the haze of light, the illusory reverse roulette in Emperor Yan's hall in Fengdu City suddenly sped up. At this moment, Yang Qing faintly felt a bit exhausted, but she regained her composure, solemnly bowing towards Lin Feng, who was in the spiritual sea in the void, and then apologetically looking towards Wang Lin. At this moment, Wang Lin, who was sitting on the throne in Emperor Yan's hall, looked at Yang Qing, smiled, and shook his head. He was very clear about Yang Qing's thoughts. A man would not easily shed tears, but before he was deeply hurt, he would gradually mature and become more capable. After all, he was still the junior brother that he was familiar with. Even Wang Lin himself had a soft spot in his heart. It was just that no matter if it was him or Yang Qing, only a few people could see this side of them. And in front of their own senior brothers, they did not hide it. Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan stood beside Yang Qing, looking at him and smiling. Yang Qing's face revealed a slightly surprised expression. In recent years, this was also a rare sight. And what was even rarer was still to come. When Yang Qing saw Sha Shuo in the reverse roulette of light and shadow, absorbing the black and white great Tao of life and death, and gradually changing, revealing a blurry human figure, he lowered his head. At this moment, the human figure formed by his primordial spirit had tears falling, dripping into the spirit sea. Chapter 1477. Seeing Yang Qing's state, Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, and Yu Hongyan were all silent. Silently, they clustered around him. Yang Qing's lips moved, but no sound came out. He raised his head again and looked at Zhu Yi and the rest. He nodded, and his expression gradually calmed down. His gaze fell back on the wheel of light and shadow reflected on the Stone of Three Lives in Emperor Yan's hall in Fengdu City. In the wheel of light and shadow that was constantly rotating, a blurry human figure was constantly moving. Yang Qing looked at the figure in a daze, not saying a word. Silently, he stared at the ball of light and shadow without shifting his gaze. Lin Feng's voice came at this moment. It will take some time to see the results. Little Qing, don't be anxious. Stay in the spirit sea with little Lin for the time being. Wang Lin and Yang Qing nodded in agreement. Yang Qing leaped and floated towards Fengdu City. Wang Lin pointed, and his spiritual power instantly guided his junior brother into Emperor Yan's hall. Outside the spirit sea, In the void, Lord Dowie and the rest saw this scene and looked at each other. Although his cultivation is not as strong as the king of the underworld when he was at his peak, his comprehension of the Tao of life and death seems to have gone further than the king of the underworld. Lord Xian glanced at Lin Feng, who was sitting cross-legged in the chaos, and said with a wry smile, "My disciple is like this, but this man's cultivation and strength have surpassed the emperor of Netherworld." Shoichi Dashin looked at Lord Dowie. "Senior brother Dowie, you were injured by Tianhai Yidu previously, and the great Tao you left behind seems to be." Lord Dowie had already closed his eyes again. Silently, he said, "Patriarch has returned to the Thousand Worlds, and the two arts of Tai and Void are not the same as before. This old man has naturally benefited. However, it is easier said than done to make up for the great Tao of the past." He shook his head. "After so many years, it's not a big deal. But Daohan, you have to grasp it carefully this time." Lin Daohan raised his left hand. His left hand was broken at the wrist and no longer existed. His body was not a true body of flesh and blood, but a transformation of his primordial spirit. Under normal circumstances, once his left hand disappeared, it could reform. However, it wasn't that he didn't want to, but that he was powerless. He was defeated by Zhu Yi and was injured by Zhu Yi's Tao of Absolute 10, which included the Tao of Supreme Wangqing and the Tao of Yin and Yang of Void Yin and Yang. This left him with injuries that were hard to heal, just like how the sovereign of one Tao was injured by Yu Huang Tianhai in the past. Although it wasn't as serious as Grand One Taoist Lord's injury in the past, Lin Daohan still found it difficult to heal with his current cultivation base. However, if he wanted to improve further, it was impossible for him to do so before he recovered from his injuries. If he dared to go through the first tribulation without recovering from his injuries, there was no other possibility than death. Lin Daohan sighed. "Back then, I wanted to take advantage of EZ's imperial examination to test the true intentions of the master and disciple to gain fame. So I also rushed to the examination to block his path. Now EZ has also stopped me. This is really his usual style." Shoichi Dashin glanced at Lin Daohan. "Earlier, you used the nether-sifting divine light to snatch his Tao-changing talisman. You should have found some clues about Xianmin Tianzong's direct lineage, right? Could this be the reason why he acted so ruthlessly?" Lin Daohan pondered for a moment and shook his head. "Most likely not. If he really wanted to, I'm afraid it would be far more than this." As soon as he said this, Lord Dowie frowned. Shoichi Dashin and Lord Xian both had looks of contemplation on their faces. After a long time, Lord Daohan said, "Daohan, the recovery of Tao death is up to you." Lin Daohan nodded. When he bowed to the Taishu Taoist just now, he already knew that whether it was him or Lord Dowie, the Taishu Taoist would not make a move. However, for them, this time, the Taishu Taoist had returned to the mortal world, and the Tai and Su incantations had reached perfection. The great Tao feedback was already a great help. Perhaps it would take a long time, but after this difficulty, the road would become very smooth. Among them, there were also benefits from Xianmin Tianzong. Such a thing, without the permission of the Celestial Sect Master, I'm afraid that even EZ would not let it go so easily. Lin Daohan shook his head slightly. But as for what the reason is, I also do not understand. A rare look of doubt and confusion appeared on his face. Lord Dowie, Shoichi Dashin, and Lord Xian were all silent. They also fell into deep thought and did not speak for a long time. Even they were unable to see through the things that had happened one after another today. Everyone in the Taishu temple subconsciously looked at the Taishu Taoist, who was also sitting cross-legged in the chaos with a calm expression. In their hearts, they seemed to have understood something. If there was anyone who could understand Lin Feng's intentions, perhaps it was their own ancestral master. However, the reason behind it was like looking at flowers through fog. Only Lord Dowie sighed softly and closed his eyes. However, it seemed that there was a line of sight between his ancestral master and Lin Feng. He vaguely thought of some things, but it was still a bit blurry. Only he had an understanding in his heart. Not only has Lin Feng already reached the peak in terms of strength and level of cultivation, the way he views many things also doesn't seem to be able to be estimated with common sense. Within the spiritual sea, the primordial golden lamp gradually disappeared, and Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone, Nine Chi clone, and God of War clones sat in the void in a triangular formation. The light on their bodies gradually dissipated, but they still sat silently in the spiritual sea with their eyes closed. Silently. Between the heaven and earth of the spiritual sea, 3 illusory pillars of light descended from the sky and shrouded the bodies of Lin Feng's 3 clones. At this moment, the spiritual sea rumbled, and the spatial rift in front of everyone began to gradually close. In a vast 1,000 domains, streams of light shuttled through the void in the sky, covering the entire world. Most people did not know what was going on, but they gradually began to guess in their hearts. At this moment, the battle for the spiritual sea seemed to have come to an end. As Juehuang Xianshang returned to the vast 1,000 domains, but was trapped in the mysterious sea, and as the battle for the spiritual sea gradually came to an end, the situation in the divine land of the vast 1,000 domains and infinite wasteland also gradually calmed down. First, the return of the Haotian mirror to White Cloud Mountain, which caused the entire creation capital of the vast 1,000 domains to be shaken. The return of the complete Haotian mirror was a major event for both the cultivation world of the human race and the demon race world. Although Juehuang was trapped in the mysterious sea and could not come out, his existence itself was worthy of everyone's attention. The Yudu race lived in the Blackboard world, and under the sealed state of the medium-class world, it was difficult for the Haotian mirror to find them. In comparison, the situation of the primordial demon ape race was even more worrisome. Jihuang Xinyuan had been killed by the master of the mystic gate, Lin Feng. Whether it was Xianmin Tianzong or Taishu Temple, they both had a huge advantage over the primordial demon ape race. Instantly, the Spirit Abyss Mountain was in a state of panic. As for the cultivation world of the human race, it was also worth pondering how the relationship between Xianmin Tianzong and Taishu Temple would develop. What would Xianmin Tianzong, who had completely dominated the great heaven primordial world, do next? This was also the focus of everyone's attention. Would they continue to maintain their previous relative detachment and not interfere with other forces? Or would they move toward the situation of complete unification? Just as everyone was concerned about this, in the void above the Kunlun mountain range in the Divine Land, the boundary opened up, and Yujing Mountain returned to the boundless world. On the peak of the majestic white jade immortal mountain, the leaves of the Xiantian treasure tree flashed with a 7-colored light. Rolling purple gas surrounded it, and the black yin-yang sea undulated continuously at the foot of the mountain. Around Yujing Mountain, there are 8 rainbow-like bridges that extended outwards, connecting 8 cave abodes. These 8 cave abodes of different shapes surrounded and protected Yujing Mountain in the center. Today, everyone in the great heaven primordial world already knew that the 8 cave dwellings were naturally the cave dwellings of the sect master of Xianmin Tianzong, the master of the mystic gate, Lin Feng, and the 8 personal disciples on Yujing Mountain. Burning Sky Cliff, Heaven Palace, Common Forest Residence, Snow Wind Valley, Nirvana Grotto, River Luo Residence, Desolate Sky Valley, and Light Dance Pavilion were all well-known grotto heavens in the boundless world. But at this moment, the 8 cave dwellings surrounding Yujing Mountain suddenly shook together. Then, the 7-colored rainbow bridge suddenly broke apart and turned into a 7-colored radiance, sweeping up the 8 cave dwellings and flying in different directions. One of the radiances landed in the northern foothills of Kunlun Mountain, but it was still a certain distance away from the Cloud Peak Mirror Lake. The place where the radiance landed was the former site of a small sect in the Kunlun mountain range in the past, Cloudwater Cave. A white jade mountain fell among the mountains, and the dark green lunar true water flowed around the mountain. It was distant and peaceful. Beside the cave at the foot of the mountain, the words Nirvana Grotto were engraved. It was the cave dwelling of Lin Feng's fifth disciple, Yin Yang Dao, Lord Yangqing. The seven-colored radiance passed through the void and landed in the sky above Emperor Yin's city in the vast infinite wasteland land. Pure gold, black, bluish-purple, green, crimson, milky white, and golden light of red and blue. The seven-colored flames cover a mountain rock and hung above Emperor Yin's city. It was the cave dwelling of Lin Feng's first disciple, Xiao Yin, Burning Sky Cliff. Similarly, the Heaven-Barren Valley had landed on the Heaven-Barren Mansion in the vast land of Infinite Region. The Mortal Forest residents had landed in the Against the Immortal World. The Gentle Dance Pavilion had landed in the pure Yin Sword Realm, and the River residents had landed in the River Realm. The other two rays of light flew across the vast land of the Divine Prefecture. The Snow Wind Valley landed at the foot of the Mist Mountain of the Snow Wind Country, while the Qian Tian Palace landed next to the Academy outside the Tianjing city of the Great Zhou Dynasty. Although it seemed abrupt, everyone understood what was going on. Lin Feng's 8 personal disciples were about to officially finish their apprenticeship and establish their own dojo. And at this moment, Xianmen Tianzong could be said to be truly spreading its branches and leaves. Similar situations were not rare in the history of the human cultivation world. Forces like the Taishu Temple had established their own dojos, which were controlled by their personal disciples to expand their legacies and recruit talents. However, in the current Xianmen Tianzong, any one of the 8 dojos could no longer be underestimated. While everyone was sighing, Lin Feng stood with his hands behind his back on Jade Capital Mountain. He tapped his fingers lightly, and his dermic power created a virtual bell of creation in front of him. Then, the bell rang leisurely. While everyone was slightly stunned, they heard the bell ring nonstop. 61, 62, 63, 64, 64. When the bell finally stopped ringing, the countless people couldn't help but tremble. It's 64. After the war between the two worlds, Xianmen Tianzong had a clear rule for the bell ceremony and announced it to everyone in the world. Everyone knew what the unprecedented 64 rings meant, but that was also why they were so shocked. Chapter 1478. Xianmen Tianzong's bell ceremony was now widely known. The bell of creation rang from 1 to 7 times as a welcoming ceremony. Depending on the identity of the guest, the first ring was the lowest, and the 7th ring was the highest. The 8th ring was an internal ceremony held by the sect. All the disciples of the sect, regardless of whether they were true disciples or those who laid the foundation, gathered together. The 9 echoes were personally hosted by ancestor Lin Feng for the sect's internal ceremony. The bell of creation rang 9 times or less, which was a welcoming ceremony and internal affairs of the sect. Anything more than 9 rings meant that Xianmen Tianzong had something to announce to the world. The most important ceremony was the 81 rings. However, no one in Xianmen Tianzong wanted to use this ceremony, because the 81 rings of the Bell of Creation meant that the sect master had fallen. Other than Xianmen Tianzong, perhaps some people would fantasize about this scene. However, when they thought of the person sitting in the position of sect master, they immediately gave up on that thought. If there was still hope for the battle for the spiritual sea in the past, then after Lin Feng killed Jihuang Xinyuan and defeated Juehuang Xuanshang, such thoughts completely disappeared. The most important ceremony below the 81st ring was the 64th ring. The 64th ring of the Bell of Creation meant that the position of sect master had been passed on. With Xianmen Tianzong's current influence and status, this was enough to shake the entire heaven primal world. However, after the initial shock, everyone felt slightly at a loss. The purple-robed youth who had brought Xianmen Tianzong to his current position was actually going to give up the position of sect master of Xianmen Tianzong. Once upon a time, many people had the inherent impression that the master of the celestial sect, Lin Feng, was equivalent to Xianmen Tianzong, and Xianmen Tianzong was equivalent to Lin Feng. After that, with the rise of Xiao Yin, Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, and the others, and the growth of a younger generation of Xianmen Tianzong, this impression gradually faded. But in the War of the Two Realms before, Lin Feng's four swords determined the fate of the world. In the Battle of the Spiritual Sea that just ended, he was invincible in the world, looking down on legendary giants like the two demon emperors. All of this made Lin Feng's personal might once again reach a new peak. Who would have thought that after reaching the peak, he would choose to leave behind his back? Some people couldn't help but guess. Could it be that Lin Feng was like the great Void Dao Lord who fought against extreme sovereign back then? Or the great Dao Lord who fought against Yuan? Although Lin Feng killed the extreme sovereign and sealed extreme sovereign, he still suffered heavy injuries and needed a long period of time to recuperate. Or, after killing Jue Huang, he needed to concentrate his remaining energy to trap Jue Huang in the Xinhai. However, after seeing the 8 cave dwellings flying in the sky and the earth-shaking might of the Bell of Fortune that Lin Feng had created with his own magic power, everyone shook their heads. Lin Feng didn't seem weak at all. Those who knew the inside story knew that the terrifying heaven-punishing sword was hanging high in the sky and could descend at any time. However, the current heaven-punishing sword was like the terrifying and mysterious Dead Sea. Under normal circumstances, not many people would be able to sense its existence. Taoist Lord Tai and the others who had already returned to White Cloud Mountain stood at the top of the mountain, looking in the direction of Kunlun Mountain. Their expressions were slightly complicated and indescribable. The other cultivators in the Divine Land also felt the same. At this time, countless light and shadow images appeared in every corner of the great heaven primordial world, appearing in front of every cultivator. Lin Feng's figure appeared on the screen. His expression was calm, and he had a smile on his face. "I'm sorry to disturb you. I'm so presumptuous because I have something to tell you. From today onwards, I, Lin Feng, the master of the celestial sect of wonders, will pass the position of sect master of Xianmen Tianzong to the sect master's disciple, Xinyan Dao Master, Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan will be the second sect master of our sect. Today, I will announce it to the world. Fellow cultivators in the world, please bear witness. The official ceremony will be held after my disciples, Xian and I, and Xian Ming, return from the spiritual sea. At that time, I hope that fellow cultivators in the world can spare some time to attend the ceremony. I thank you in advance." The figures of Xiaoyan, Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, Yuhang Yin, Li Yuan Feng, and Luo Qingwu were all in front of Lin Feng. Wang Lin and Yang Qing also had their Dharma power projections land here. After hearing what Lin Feng said and seeing Wang Lin and Yang Qing's appearance, everyone sighed in their hearts. It seemed that the spiritual sea was indeed in the hands of Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong. If Wang Lin and Yang Qing were really in the spiritual sea, they would definitely not be able to pass through the spiritual sea realm and descend into the boundless world. Xiaoyan had always been the sect master's disciple of Lin Feng. This position had never changed. His prestige and strength were enough. It was expected that he would take over the position of the second sect master of Xianmen Tianzong. It was just that no one would have thought that this day would come so quickly. His master, Lin Feng, was at the peak of suppressing the heavens. He was in the prime of his life. Who would have thought that he would retreat and choose to pass on his position at this moment? Xiaoyan stood in front of Lin Feng. At this moment, his expression was calm. However, when Lin Feng had just told him, Xiaoyan was equally shocked. It was just that before he could ask, just by meeting his master's gaze, he understood in his heart. Xiaoyan had always been a decisive person who dared to be the first in the world. The doubts in his heart disappeared, and he did not hesitate. All he thought about was that the burden was on him, and he had to work hard to do his best. He slowly bowed towards Lin Feng. Disciple Xian Yin will do his best. Beside Xiaoyan, Zhu Yi smiled faintly. His personality was not one to pass on responsibility, and he dared to take the lead. In his heart, the path of a gentleman was to be brave, to be the first in the world, to strive to be the first in the world, to strive to be the first in the world, and to strive to be the first in the world. When he was young, although he had a good relationship with Xiaoyan, he had a competitive heart. He wanted to become the #1 disciple among Lin Feng's disciples and become the role model of the sect. This had nothing to do with morality or the feelings of fellow disciples. Now, these thoughts had gradually faded, but it was not because Zhu Yi's personality and mentality had changed. He was still the green-robed scholar with a heart of innocence and a will of steel. However, as he continued to move forward on the path of cultivation, he was now on the path that he cared about the most. My wish is for the principles of heaven and earth to be spread throughout the world. Everyone can hear it and know it. Everyone will have the opportunity to understand the mysteries of knowledge. My wish is for all living beings in the billions of worlds to be free and unfettered. They will no longer be ignorant and mediocre. My wish is to create a bright world forever. All evil and crooked paths will not enter the world. All evil spirits and monsters, evil and evil, will disappear from the world forever. My wish is for everyone in the world to be like dragons and saints. Everyone will be free and unfettered. They will control their own fate and destiny. This was his great wish, to promote academies and academies, to spread throughout the world, to lead the revolution of humanity, and to move forward side by side. He knew that his master and senior brother both supported him. It did not matter whether he took over the position of sect leader of Xianmen Tianzong or not. Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, Yu Hongyan, Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, and Luo Qingwu also looked at Xiaoyan with a smile. Then, together with Zhu Yi, they bowed slightly. We are willing to follow eldest senior brother's lead. In the great heaven primordial world, even the experts of the demon race had a scene of light and shadow. Looking at this scene, they were all silent. As for the human cultivators on the divine land, most of them sighed softly. Congratulations, Dao Master Xianyan. Congratulations, Emperor Yin. We will definitely go. Such a grand event. Please forgive us for disturbing you. Although the official ceremony would only be held after Wang Lin and Yang Qing returned, today's scene had already been announced to the world. This huge change, coupled with the matter of Xianmen Tianzong refining the spiritual sea, had a far-reaching impact. Many people were still unable to recover from their shock. The change in Xianmen Tianzong was really beyond everyone's expectations. What followed was deep doubt as to what Lin Feng was going to do after he turned around and let go in such a cool and unrestrained manner. Although they were shocked and puzzled, everyone sighed in their hearts. The master of the celestial sect, Lin Feng, was already the greatest legend in the history of the great heaven primordial world. Based on the time of the vast thousand worlds, in less than 100 years, he had established the huge foundation of Xianmen Tianzong and climbed to the peak of the great heaven primordial world. Even though he had passed the position of sect master to his disciple, his figure still stood in Xianmen Tianzong, overlooking the vast thousand worlds. Later, after Wang Lin and Yang Qing returned from the spiritual sea, Xianmen Tianzong indeed held a grand ceremony and invited all the people in the world to watch the ceremony. What was worthy of everyone's attention was that other than the experts of the human cultivation world, there were also experts of the demon race, such as the monkey, the phoenix great sage, the Taodai great sage, and the mysterious underworld great sage. This inevitably made everyone feel a little strange. However, they were all guests invited by Lin Feng. On Yujing Mountain, everyone could only settle down and be guests. Therefore, under this unprecedented and unique ceremony, Lin Feng passed the position of sect master to Xiaoyan. Lin Feng used his magical powers to create things out of nothing, turning them into a mountain that hung in the air. It floated above the Mirror Lake on the cloud peak in the north of the Kunlun mountain range, reflecting the lake water below. Then on Yujing Mountain, the Taiji Pavilion, which seemed to be the residence of the sect master, the main hall, the great hall of all heavens, the universe hall, the divine craft hall, the spreading law hall, and the other buildings, as well as the medicine valley, all left the immortal mountain and landed on the top of the floating mountain. The grand imperial palace, the Dharma treasure of creation, officially changed its name to Taiji Star Palace. Together with the other two Dharma treasures of creation, Ding of Shenzhou and the brilliant Pearl of Nanyang, they became the treasures that guarded Xianmen Tianzong. Other than the Taiji Star Palace, which was still in the Xianhai, merging with the Taiji Heavenly Cycle Stars formation and participating in the sealing of the Xianhai Sea, Ding of Shenzhou and the brilliant Pearl of Nanyang were both taken by Xiaoyan. When Xiaoyan tore open the crack in the Netherworld Sea, thousands of calamities and tribulations appeared, but everything was calm, strange, and shocking. The figure of Tian Yi appeared, merging with the power of the Netherworld Sea, making everyone's hearts tremble. Looking at this scene, everyone knew that other than the Spirit Sea, the Ing Sea, and the Star Sea, the Netherworld Sea had actually fallen into the hands of Xianmen Tianzong. The second sect master of Xianmen Tianzong had another title besides the name Yin Emperor, Master of the Netherworld Sea. After the ceremony was over, everyone dispersed. Walking on the road, they looked back in the direction of the Kunlun mountain range. The last scene left in their eyes was that from today onwards, the Yujing Mountain, which was respectfully called the Ancestral Court within the Celestial Sect of Wonders, once again broke through the sky and disappeared into the sky. Chapter 1479. Time slipped away. Years flew by. The master of the Celestial Sect, Lin Feng, sat on the mysterious heaven treasure tree at the top of Mount Yujing. After leaving the divine land through the void, he never appeared in the Tianyuan world again. The only exception was when his disciple, Xianmen Tianzong, the second sect master, Xiaoyan, got married. Lin Feng returned to the vast thousand world and presided over his disciple's wedding. It became one of the biggest events in the divine land in recent years. On the other side of the wedding, the ancient dynasty that Xiao Zhen'er came from had become the largest dynasty in the divine land. Whether it was the Qin dynasty, the Great Zhou dynasty, or the Northern Militant Royal Court, they all lost some confidence when facing the ancient dynasty. As for the neighboring country, the Great Qin dynasty, which had Shi Xingyun in charge, was in a slightly better situation, while the Great Zhou dynasty was under great pressure. Fortunately, there was still the Mount Shu Sword sect to help them, which was why they were able to restrain the ancient dynasty to a certain extent. On the day of Xiao Yan's wedding, the two giants of the Mount Shu Sword sect, Xian Longsheng and Sword Venerable Tiangang, came together and climbed Mount Yujing. Although they didn't say it explicitly, everyone knew that the two giants of Mount Shu were here to compete with Lin Feng again. The result was already clear before the battle had even begun. There would be no surprises. Xian Longsheng and Sword Venerable Tiangang were also well aware of this, but they still went there resolutely. As for the master of the celestial sect, Lin Feng, he did not arrogantly refuse. Instead, he directly agreed. This was beyond the expectations of some people. After all, even if Lin Feng did not have the heaven-crushing sword in his hand, he would only be able to compete with the Taishu Taoist and the Gautama Buddha in terms of his cultivation of the sword. Even if the sword ancestor Ren Changmei were to come back to life with the fairy heaven sword, the great immortal nature sword formation, and the power of the Mount Shu sword peak, he would still be no match for Lin Feng. After the wedding ceremony, Xian Longsheng and Honorable Swordsman Tiangang went to Mount Yujing. No one knew the outcome of the duel. Even Sword Immortal Luo Qingwu, the pavilion master of the Light Dance Pavilion of Xianmen Tianzong and the personal disciple of Lin Feng, did not watch the duel. Everyone could see that before long, Xian Longsheng and Sword Lord Celestial Dipper would descend the mountain together. Without a word, they would return to Shushan together. After returning to Mount Shu, the Big Dipper, Sword Venerable, sat on the peak of the mountain for 7 days. He untied the Big Dipper ancient sword that had been following him since the Middle Era and left it on the peak of Mount Shu. Then, he directly went into seclusion in the void. Xian Longsheng also left behind the heaven-opening sword and passed it on to the current sect leader of the Mount Shu sword sect, Ji Wenrui, who had already ascended to the Dao integration stage. Then, he traveled far away again, his whereabouts unknown. The two powerhouses of the Mount Shu sword sect, one in seclusion, the other on a long journey, seemed to have been interrupted once again. However, the other powerful human forces, including the ancient dynasty, would not look down on the Mount Shu sword sect because of this. Even though Xian Longsheng and the Big Dipper sword venerable knew that they would lose, they once again had no hope of challenging the sect leader of the celestial sect, Lin Feng. However, they still made everyone sigh in admiration. Yujing Mountain became the ancestral court and did not step into the human world. The floating sky peak above the cloud peak and mirror lake became the new mountain gate of Xianmen Tianzong. The second sect leader, Xiao Yin, lived on the floating sky peak, while his first disciple, Tang Jun, was stationed in the burning sky cliff, which was one with the Flame Emperor's city in the infinite wilderness. The first generation of Xianmen Tianzong, Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, Yu Hongyan, Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, Luo Qingwu, and the others, lived in their own dojos. Similarly, they recruited talents and disciples to expand the sect. The whole of Xianmen Tianzong showed a steady and magnificent momentum of expansion. Among them, one of the more unique ones was the Ez Zhu. In these years, he had been traveling the world, and the Book of Changes Academy had been continuously promoting it. With the ancient dynasty, the Great Zhou dynasty, and the Great Qin dynasty as the foundation, it continued to expand in all directions. Going north and entering the territory of the Northern Militant Royal Court on the vast grasslands, the Northern Militant herdsmen started to gradually change their traditional customs. Many cities were built, and among them, the most complete buildings were the academies. Passing through the territory of the Northern Militant Royal Court, there were academies even in the extreme north at the edge of the Arctic Ice Sea. There were few people here, and the conditions were not good. However, with the Book of Changes Academy as the center, it started to spread in all directions, gathering the indigenous people here and improving their living conditions. It was not that those with great magical powers could directly move the mountains and fill the seas. Instead, it was through educating the previously unknown system of knowledge, helping the local people to support themselves. Cultivators only helped to set up barriers to isolate some disasters that mortals could not withstand. And all of this was just the beginning. The teachers in the academies were constantly studying these natural disasters, trying to find ways to eliminate them as much as possible, so that mortals could also find ways to resist them in the future. Zhu Yi first built the Mirror Lake Academy, and then the Book of Changes Academy. It was never just to study the meaning of scriptures, but to be all-encompassing and, in the end, to devote himself to all aspects of the world. During this period, there were many problems that could not be solved in a short period of time. It might even require the efforts of several generations, or even countless years. But the people in the academy, led by Zhu Yi, would always walk on this path. The academy was built on the Arctic Ice Sea, the desert to the west, the vast ocean to the east, and the wasteland to the south were naturally no exception. The people that the Book of Changes Academy accepted were not limited to countries or ethnic groups. All kinds of people outside of civilization could study. Under the guidance of Zhu Yi, and with the help of the disciples of the Qian Tian Palace in Xianmen Tianzong, the teachers of the academy could easily cross the Gobi Desert, cross the ocean, or go deep into the desolate mountains to bring their knowledge to the indigenous people there. They would put themselves in the shoes of the indigenous people, understand the problems they faced, receive their feedback, and then specifically solve the most urgent problems that needed to be faced. Although whether it was the might of the celestial sect of wonders or the prestige of Zhu Yi, they were all extremely grand. However, the pragmatic style of the academy still caused a lot of discussion among the traditional scholars. When the Mirror Lake Academy was first built, there was already a controversy after understanding the specific situation. Previously, after the war between the two worlds, Zhu Yi began to gradually promote it, and after it had a real impact on the traditional scholars, the controversy in this regard became even greater. But as time passed, the direction of the entire literary world finally began to gradually change. Later, Easy Zhu enlightened the world and was truly known as the leader of humanity. His name could be conferred as a saint, and he carried on the past, surpassing countless sages and sages in history. In the secular world, Zhu Yi was praised by billions of people and was respected as a saint. From the old men in the countryside to the ignorant children, there was no one who did not know of him. However, in this process, there were naturally people who were proud, and naturally, there were also people who were disappointed. In addition to some traditional scholars who were unwilling to change or difficult to change, the one who suffered the most impact was the re-emergence of Buddhism. The return of Gautama Buddha and the future glazed Buddha, Lord to the outside world, was undoubtedly a huge inspiration for all Buddhist believers. Buddha didn't need to show his divinity. The moment he returned to the outside world, the hearts of all Buddhist believers were filled with boundless light. Buddhism was truly re-emerging, and Gautama Buddha didn't worry about the old site of the Big Lane Temple. The Eastern Glazed Light world was located on the sea in the east of China. However, the continuous rise of the School of Changes was quietly shaking the beliefs of many people, including the Buddhist sections. This also included the Northern Militant Imperial Court's belief in the everlasting heaven. However, compared to the Northern Militant Imperial Court, Buddhism's goal was much larger. Gautama Buddha, who had reached the immortal realm in ancient times, was truly the top powerhouse of the Tianyuan Great World. As the master of the Xianmen sect, Lin Feng broke through the sky and left, and Lord Taishu only heard the news of his return but never saw him. The Gautama Buddha was impressively the person with the highest cultivation state in the vast land of the Divine Land. Facing the attack of the Book of Changes on his orthodoxy, how would Buddha react? This attracted everyone's attention. Even the Taishu Temple with the Haoyan mirror was paying close attention to this. Before this, the biggest change in the Tianyuan Great World was not long after the Battle of the Spirit Sea ended. After the master of Xianmen, Lin Feng, left, Taishu Temple took the Haoyan mirror and headed to the vast land of Heaven Wasteland. Juehuang Xianshang guarded the mysterious sea, and the capital of the Yudu race was located in the Blackboard world, so it wasn't easy to find them. However, the ancestral land of the ancient demon ape race, Spirit Abyss Mountain, was an obvious target. The place that Taishu Temple was heading to was Spirit Abyss Mountain. The Extreme Emperor was sent to annihilation by Lin Feng again, and the Juehuang was sealed in the mysterious sea. The Yudu race could only protect themselves. Under such circumstances, the Haoyan mirror in its perfect state was enough to wipe out the demon race world in the vast land of Heaven Wasteland. Although Taishu Temple suffered heavy losses in the Battle of the Spirit Sea, and almost all of their strong practitioners were injured, Lord Tai and the rest still headed to the vast land of Heaven Wasteland with determination. Although King Yuan Dragon was dead, the demon race still had the monkey and phantom son Yudu. They were all foreseeable, strong practitioners. The only thing they lacked was time. To the current Spirit Abyss Mountain, the Great Sage, and the Great Sage Zhu Yin, the arrival of the Haoyan Mirror was undoubtedly a nightmarish disaster. It was an irresistible force. Unexpectedly, yet seemingly within expectations, Gautama Buddha actually descended on Spirit Abyss Mountain that day. While announcing his return to the boundless universe, he also blocked the Haoyan Mirror. The Great Sage and the Great Sage Zhu Yin accepted the enlightenment of Gautama Buddha. The primordial demonic ape race all submitted to Buddhism, and the Taishu Taoist was nowhere to be seen. Lord Tai and the rest could only shake their heads and sigh. At this moment, as the school of Book of Changes advanced step by step, what kind of reaction would the Buddhism, whose incense and power had obviously decreased, and what kind of reaction would Gautama Buddha have? Not only were the human cultivation world and the divine land paying attention, but even the demon race world in the vast land of Heaven Wasteland was also paying attention. Although Xianmen Tianzong was powerful, there were still some Buddhist cultivators who clashed with them. However, Gautama Buddha didn't have much of a reaction. It's not that I'm afraid of Master and Aunt Xuanli. It's just that for Gautama Buddha, second senior brothers, teaching everyone to be self-reliant and to be like dragons is not really contradictory to his teaching everyone to be able to distinguish themselves and become Buddhas. In the Snow Wind Valley next to Mist Mountain in Snow Wind Country, the junior sister of Eziju Yi, celestial of martial Yu Hongyan, looked at her disciple, Lord Tianjing Zhaohuan, and said with a smile, "There are Buddhist cultivators who want to compete with second senior brother's disciple for this merit, but they are at a disadvantage." However, Gautama Buddha's 3 lives karma curse is indeed mysterious. Second senior brother and third senior brother both said that Gautama Buddha had most likely seen some clues about them. At this point, perhaps only Master can block his path. Zhaohuan nodded. Yu Hongyan continued to ask, now that third senior brother's cultivation has improved, and he has refined Fengdu City, even the resentful souls can be reincarnated. Uncle and Aunt, have you decided whether to reincarnate or continue to stay with you? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.